I'm leveling up my stats and Marvel. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction, so please don't attempt real magic. The results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 126: 3 Gwens in one frame. The mastermind behind it all is a dimensional demon. That's good news. In Russell's mind, dimensional demons are synonymous with wealthy tycoons. To better protect the real universe from magical corruption, Russell has no choice but to rob them of their riches to enrich himself. However, the dream dimension is a rather special one among the other dimensions. Finding its location and how to enter it isn't easy. Russell first brought the two Gwens back to the reading room and settled them in. They were both witnesses, a perfect excuse for Russell to attack the nightmare. Although, even without an excuse, given the opportunity, Russell would still decisively strike. Afterward, he would go find his encyclopedia, the Ancient One. Kamar Taj, the Ancient One's residence. Russell sipped the Ancient One's newly brewed tea while recounting the whole story to her. The new tea was sweeter than before. After understanding Russell's purpose, the Ancient One excitedly said, "So, Russell, you plan to cause trouble for the Lord of the Dream Dimension and extract some energy from him?" Russell gave the Ancient One a strange look. "Sorcerer, I feel like you're even more excited than I am." The Ancient One slightly restrained herself, but still smiled. "That's not important. What's important is how we enter the Dream Dimension. That's why I came to you, Sorcerer," Russell said somewhat helplessly. With his current strength, dealing with a dimensional lord was a piece of cake. But the prerequisite was finding the other party. The Dream Dimension can connect with the dreams of beings in reality. When they connect, the coordinates of the Dream Dimension will also be exposed. But under normal circumstances, they can't connect. After all, the Dream Dimension is just an alternate dimension. Not all dreams occur there. But if we close the magic arrays of the three temples, the probability of the Dream Dimension connecting with the dreams of beings on Earth will greatly increase. The Ancient One looked at Russell and added, "But there's also a risk in doing so. There's a possibility that other extra-dimensional demons might take the opportunity to enter Earth. If Russell could monitor the dreams of everyone on Earth while preventing demons from entering, you could try this method." Russell shook his head. "Are there any other ways, Sorcerer? Although I could do it, it's too exhausting." "Other ways?" The Ancient One pondered for a moment, then suggested, "That amazing Spider-Man you mentioned might have some clues. Shall we go find that amazing Spider-Man?" Russell was somewhat tempted. As a fellow Spider-Man, he couldn't stand by and watch the amazing Spider-Man be tricked by a nightmare. When out on the world, Spider-Men should help each other. It wasn't about coveting the energy of the Dream Dimension. "Russell, after you enter the Dream Dimension, remember to open a portal for me," the Ancient One said, interrupting Russell's reverie. "I don't need your help this time, Sorcerer. I can handle nightmare all by myself. It has nothing to do with that." Ancient One shook her head with a smile. "Curiosity is a sorcerer's nature. I just want to see the Dream Dimension." "All right," Russell nodded indifferently, stood up, and prepared to leave. "I'll go back and prepare. I'll contact you again, Sorcerer, once I find the Dream Dimension." Golden magical sparks flickered, and the portal opened. On the other side was a scene that gave Russell a headache. Three Gwens from different universes stared at each other. Russell stepped out of the portal, first pointing to the little Gwen from Earth 404. "This is the little Gwen," then, pointing to the Gwen from Earth 65. "This is Ghost Gwen," finally, pointing to the Gwen from the Amazing Spider-Man universe. "This is the Extraordinary Gwen. Is it alright if I call you that?" The three Gwens nodded, indicating that they had no objection. "Russell, why have I never seen your counterpart in so many universes?" Ghost Gwen suddenly asked. This was indeed quite puzzling to her. The Ancient One, Spider-Man Peter Parker, Iron Man Tony Stark, Scarlet Witch Wanda, so many people have counterparts. Why doesn't Russell have one? "Because I am who I am, a different kind of spark. Speak plainly, Russell." Ghost Gwen was speechless. She didn't believe such nonsense. Even the mighty Ancient One, and the weak George and Helen, couldn't escape this. Russell must have some special reason. "Because I come from a more distant universe." "Perhaps, maybe, possibly," Not in this large multiverse. Russell didn't give a definitive answer. But he was quite certain he came from outside the Marvel universe. As for the omnipotent universe, the one above all, OAA, just take those concepts with a grain of salt. Could an OAA that could be created truly be an OAA? A more distant universe. Ghost Gwen seemed thoughtful. After Ghost Gwen's interruption, Russell remembered the important matter. Extraordinary Gwen, do you want to go back to your world? Can I still go back to my world? But, aren't I already dead? Extraordinary Gwen's voice was a mixture of surprise and worry. After this period of time, she had also figured out her situation. She had been stuffed into little Gwen's body by the nightmare. When little Gwen slept, she would return to little Gwen's body to nurture her soul. She could only come out and act when little Gwen woke up. But ordinary people couldn't see her at all except little Gwen. Russell and Ghost Gwen could see her because they were sorcerers who could see souls. Extraordinary Gwen, the death of the body is just a stage of life, not the end. I am the Sorcerer Spider-Man and the Sorcerer Supreme. Reconstructing your body and completing your resurrection is a piece of cake. Ghost Gwen nodded in agreement. Extraordinary Gwen, Russell is right. We do indeed possess the technology to clone bodies and complete resurrection. However, Ghost Gwen looked at Russell, puzzled. Russell, do you have a way to find Extraordinary Gwen's cosmic coordinates? Russell nodded. The body and soul are strongly linked. Through Gwen's soul, Russell could find her body. Even if she were burned to ashes, there was still a way to find her. Unless, of course, some extra-dimensional demon deliberately took Gwen's body out of the universe. But only Nightmare could do that. This way, Russell could find her directly, saving a lot of trouble. Thank you. Ghost Gwen, Russell. After understanding the relationship between Ghost Gwen and Russell, Gwen understood what Russell meant when she asked him why he helped her. Because you are Gwen. Clearly, the meaning of those words was much greater than she had imagined. The resurrection device still needs to be set up by Tony. Shall we set off in a few days? Russell asked. Okay, Gwen X3. Little Gwen, what are you doing here? Russell asked. Russell Sorcerer Supreme Russell. Chapter 127 Earning 30,000 attribute points a day. After agreeing to depart in a few days, Russell would take Little Gwen and Extraordinary Gwen back to Little Gwen's home. The exact number of days depended on when Tony could fine-tune the parameters. Unfortunately, Tony was unavailable recently, so it would have to be delayed a few more days. The next morning, waking up in the bookstore, Russell opened his attribute panel and glanced at his attribute points. Attribute points. 291,557, his attribute points had increased by nearly 30,000. On Earth 404, approximately 150,000 people died every day. Normally, this would provide Russell with over 30,000 attribute points. The reason it was less than 30,000 yesterday was because that was the average, not a fixed value. At that moment, Russell understood the Celestial's joy. But the thought that a slight improvement in his divine body required 3 million attribute points made Russell feel utterly disheartened. Indeed, a man cannot get rich without unexpected wealth, and a horse cannot get fat without night grazing. He still needed to cultivate relationships with his dimensional demon brothers. For example, the Blood God. Russell still had a score to settle with him regarding the Air family incident. More importantly, Russell possessed the coordinates of the Blood Dimension. When Moron traveled to the Blood Dimension to receive the Blood God's baptism and strengthen himself, he took some of Russell's divine power with him. Therefore, Russell was able to successfully locate the Blood Dimension. Gwen, get up and have breakfast. Thinking it over, Russell decided to have breakfast with Gwen first. After Gwen went out to tend to her street hero career, Russell would go find the Blood God. He believed in the citizens of New York and the Blood God. They both had a bright future. After a symbolic wash, Russell accompanied Gwen to eat breakfast. While eating, Gwen asked, Russell, I feel like there's something extra in my body. What's going on? Russell was silent. He suddenly remembered. After transforming into divine body, the material composition of his body came from the luminous white space, not the real universe. Concentrating, Russell looked at Gwen. He discovered that the luminous white matter was merging into her body, transforming into special energy. A unique energy similar to Russell's divine power, possessing extremely strong defensive and offensive capabilities. It's somewhat similar to the radiant white energy, yet different. Radiant white energy primarily enhances Gwen's physique, spirit, and lifespan. This substance will be absorbed and digested by your body, transforming into special energy that can be used in combat. Oh, after listening to Russell's explanation, Gwen responded and ignored him. She trusted Russell wouldn't harm her. By the way, Russell, Matt recently discovered alien warship wreckage for sale in the New York black market. I know, that's not surprising. Russell nodded calmly. He wasn't surprised by this outcome. Marx pointed out in Capital that for 100% profit, Capital dares to trample on all human laws. With 300% profit, Capital dares to commit any crime, even risking the gallows. An alien warship wreckage, due to the diminishing returns, could potentially yield profits exceeding 1,000% at times. It's normal for some to take risks. He had already entrusted the handling of the alien warship wreckage to SHIELD, therefore, he wouldn't interfere until the matter was settled. What if this was SHIELD setting a trap? His rash intervention would only disrupt their plans. After breakfast, he waited for Gwen to go out again. Magical sparks flickered before Russell, and a portal opened directly to the blood dimension. The blood dimension. As Russell stepped out of the portal, two cracks suddenly appeared on the blood moon in the sky. They were eyes. Spider-Man the Mage. How dare you enter my blood dimension? A thunderous voice boomed from the blood moon, instantly traversing endless distances and echoing throughout the entire world. Blood God, I've come to settle accounts with you. Russell's righteous voice also instantly traversed endless distances, reaching the blood god's ears. Settle accounts? Ha ha ha. We do have an account to settle. Spider-Man the Mage? Accompanying the voice was a massive pillar of crimson energy. To the blood god's astonishment, the crimson energy pillar struck Russell. This was the blood god's way of greeting him and demonstrating his power. He didn't expect this blatant energy attack to hit. In his view, Russell had several ways to block or dodge it. But opportunity knocks but once. Seeing the attack hit, the blood god decisively increased its power. But soon, the blood god realized something was wrong. Why? Not a single ounce of energy was dissipating. It was as if this wasn't a battle. The blood god looked closely and discovered the truth. His energy had been devoured by Russell. You dare to devour my energy in my dimension? Aren't you afraid of bursting? A mocking smile flashed across the blood god's face as he continued to output energy. My energy is inexhaustible. Well, you'd better be. Seeing the blood god's sensible attitude, Russell wasn't in a hurry to attack. His purpose in causing trouble for the blood god was for energy, and the blood god was now supplying him with energy. His goal had been achieved, so there was no need to change the status quo. And the facts quickly proved that the blood god's energy was not inexhaustible. A moment later, the blood god stopped its energy attack. Attribute points plus 4398-2200. My energy is inexhaustible. Hearing Russell's mocking voice, the blood god's body trembled with rage. Its wings unfurled, and the blood moon transformed into a giant bat, swooping down on Russell on the ground. The blood god refused to believe that Russell, without the sun and the advantage of terrain, was still its match. Russell clenched his fist, his divine power coalescing. Behind him, a shimmering white substance surged forth, forming a gigantic, shimmering white fist. As the blood god approached, Russell unleashed a punch. The shimmering white fist moved in response. Swoosh, the shimmering white fist collided with the bat's claws. Without any hesitation, the fist shattered the claws, then transformed back into a claw, grabbing the bat's neck and slamming it to the ground. Time seemed to freeze, the entire blood dimension momentarily still. The next instant, a deafening roar erupted, a massive mushroom cloud rising from the ground. Boom, the earth trembled, shockwaves sweeping outwards, engulfing the heavens and earth. As the smoke cleared, the image of the blood god's slightly dimmed body being held like a chick in Russell's large, slender white hand was witnessed by all living beings within the blood dimension. For a moment, the blood dimension was in turmoil. Emperors come and go. Next year it's my turn, blood god. Can I settle the score now? Russell's calm voice rang out. Compared to killing the goose that lays the golden eggs, Russell preferred sustainable, draining the pond approach. You're not the sorcerer Spider-Man, the blood god's slightly trembling voice replied, seemingly unrelated to the question. You're not Spider-Man, there can't be such a powerful Spider-Man. You're an ancient god. Which ancient god are you? Sorry, the chapter I owed yesterday will have to wait a while. Chapter 128 Installment Plan, Blood God. An ancient god? According to the life level given on the panel, Russell is indeed an ancient god now. Although, he's not ancient at all. Bang. 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 Russell pressed down on the blood god and slammed him into the ground 3 more times. I'll give you one more chance to rephrase your words, whether it was the 3 slams that woke him up, or the provocation of Russell's murderous voice. The blood god finally reacted, recognizing his predicament of being at the mercy of others, and muttered, "How do you intend to settle accounts? Last time, old friends reunited after a long separation. We should have burned poems, brewed wine, enjoyed a good drink, and exchanged gifts. But you, blood god, attacked me, severely injuring me. Shouldn't you pay for my emotional distress and medical expenses? And shouldn't you also make up for the gifts I owe?" The blood god remained silent, his anger rising. He had clearly seen Russell unharmed before his avatar disintegrated. On the contrary, in their last encounter, he had lost a vital avatar and his entire heir family had been wiped out. Consequently, his dominance over the blood dimension had significantly diminished. And Russell was demanding compensation. Faced with Russell's preemptive accusation, the blood god decisively chose to swallow his anger. "Yes, very good," Russell nodded in satisfaction, releasing his grip on the blood god's large, white hand. Totaling it all up, it's 2 billion units of energy. The blood god remained silent again. Seeing this, Russell asked, "What, blood god? Such a vast blood dimension, and you can't even produce 2 billion units of energy. Spider-Man, you are unaware of this." A crimson mist billowed, and a miniature blood god avatar emerged. The blood god, his face drooping, complained to Russell, "Although I am the lord of the blood dimension, it is not entirely mine. I only have the right to use most of the energy within it, but not ownership." Once, Russell interrupted the blood god, his voice icy and threatening, "So, blood god, you don't want to compensate, forcing me to simply shatter the blood dimension and plunder it completely? No, 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 Spider-Man, you misunderstand. Please let me explain." The blood god quickly shook his head. "What I mean is, my authority in the blood dimension is insufficient to pay 2 billion units of energy at once. But if my authority is increased, it will be possible." The blood god's true intentions were revealed. He wanted to drag the other demons of the blood dimension into the mess. In a short time, he had first been tricked by the Ancient One, and then had one of his important avatars destroyed by Russell, requiring repair. His personal treasury is now nearly depleted, and he can only use the shared energy of the blood dimension to make up for it. But such a huge loss will incur the blood dimension's wrath, and his authority will be reduced. If the blood god doesn't do this, after Russell leaves, he, severely weakened, will surely be overthrown by the other demon gods. Russell understood the blood god's underlying meaning and said with a half-smile, "The blood god has a good plan. But in this way, won't I have to pay my labor fee as well, Spider-Man mage? The blood dimension really can't squeeze out any more energy," the blood god complained again. "Why? Over countless years, the blood dimension should have accumulated a lot of energy, right?" Russell asked, puzzled. "Spider-Man mage, energy is conserved. Energy cannot be created or destroyed out of thin air. It can only be transferred from one object to another." "I know that. Be more specific." "The blood dimension has ways to acquire magical energy, and it also has expenditures. Simply put, we earn a lot, but we also spend a lot. Energy will only be maintained at a certain level, it won't be deliberately accumulated." Russell was speechless. "This is very unmagical." Adjusting his expression, Russell smiled and said, "Blood god, it's alright if you can't pay all at once. We can pay in installments, interest first." Looking at Russell's smiling face, the blood god suddenly realized he seemed to have let a wolf into the house. But who could blame him for not wanting to give up his position as Lord of the Blood Dimension? He could only hope that Russell would perish in the future. Bethesda, a secret base of SHIELD. Nick Fury had completed his resurrection surgery. The painful memories of the surgery had been overridden by the transplanted memories. At this moment, he was leaning back in his hospital bed, listening to Coulson report on the events of the past few days. "It's unbelievable. There is such a brutal force in the universe, whose operational principle is to slaughter half the life of other civilizations. Even more unbelievable is that Russell actually took the initiative to snipe the leader of this force, and succeeded." Nick Fury was deeply moved. He still couldn't forgive himself for not being more proactive in recruiting Russell back then. "Coulson, if we had tried just a little harder back then, would we have had a chance to recruit Russell? If Russell had joined the Avengers, Earth's safety would never have been a concern. It's such a pity." "Yes, Director Fury," Coulson murmured in agreement with Nick Fury. He knew his old boss had just undergone resurrection surgery and was in a vulnerable state, both physically and mentally. Being sentimental was perfectly normal. "Coulson, don't call me director anymore," Nick Fury suddenly corrected Coulson's form of address. "After a while, I will recommend you to the World Security Council to serve as director of SHIELD. "Why, Director Fury?" Coulson asked, puzzled. "SHIELD is facing internal and external troubles right now, and we can't do without you. The internal troubles are about Hydra. I will help you. It just so happens that I'm going underground, which will allow me to better track down Hydra. Yes, besides Hydra, Nick Fury also needs to carefully observe the Skrulls' movements. Although he and the Skrulls are allies, he hasn't forgotten to be wary of them." As for external threats, Nick Fury looked meaningfully at Coulson. "Coulson, as the supernatural world gradually emerges, various countries are establishing their own agencies to handle supernatural matters. SHIELD's authority has been diluted. Furthermore, with the theft of the Tesseract, SHIELD will never regain the Council's trust. If it weren't for the relationship between SHIELD and Russell, SHIELD might have already been disbanded. In the future, SHIELD will continue to be marginalized until it becomes merely a tool for communicating with Russell." Coulson remained silent. This was precisely SHIELD's biggest problem at present. On the one hand, SHIELD's authority was constantly being eroded. On the other hand, the relationship between SHIELD and Russell was not stable. Russell simply disliked dealing with official agencies, not that he couldn't. He could even move to another planet or another universe. Coulson shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Director Fury, if that's the case, after dealing with Hydra, perhaps we should disband SHIELD ourselves. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels." Chapter 129 Tony, Bucky, Steve. The northern landscape is a frozen wasteland, with snow covering thousands of miles. This is Siberia, a remote and frigid region. Hidden within is a steel base, a secret Hydra base. "Jarvis, scan this secret base ahead, find the laboratory entrance." "Roger, sir." Tony, clad in his suit, is rapidly approaching the base from afar. On the ground, SHIELD agents are also advancing quickly in coordination. "UFO detected. UFO detected. Requesting instructions, attack." The guards inside the base quickly spot the undisguised Tony and, upon receiving the order, unleash beams of energy. However, none hit their target. Jarvis, maneuvering his suit at high speed, evades all attacks. Simultaneously, small missiles are launched from the suit, accurately striking the resistance forces within the secret base. "Jarvis, am I close enough?" "Just ahead at the window, sir." Following Jarvis's guidance, Tony bursts through the window. Inside the laboratory, guards and researchers are mingling, hurriedly transferring experimental data. The moment the Iron Man's suit burst through the window, the guards drew their weapons and opened fire. The researchers, however, immediately ducked and covered their heads. Many of them had been tricked into coming by Hydra and were unaware of the true situation. "Please stop, everyone. Let's talk this out." Tony remained calm in the face of the guards' gunfire. These small-caliber firearms couldn't penetrate the defenses of his Iron Man suit. However, the guards in the lab clearly had no intention of having a proper conversation with Tony. Or rather, they only wanted to talk to Tony with bullets. Seeing this, Tony's shoulder armor rose, and several small, powerful missiles took down the guards one by one. Landing, Tony surveyed the room. The researchers obediently knelt on the ground, heads in their hands. The guards were also powerless to resist. Stepping out of the suit, Tony gave Jarvis the order, "Alert mode." Inside the lab, several nutrient tanks were being activated urgently. It seemed they wanted to awaken the dormant weapons within. The Winter Soldier. Hydra's secret research into super soldiers. Tony's target was one of them, James Buchanan Barnes, nicknamed Bucky. One night in 1991, Bucky, who had been captured and brainwashed, killed Tony's parents. Since receiving this news from Mephisto, Tony had been searching for him. Tony checked several nutrient pods one by one and luckily found Bucky there as well. Walking to the control panel, Tony operated the system, interrupting the Winter Soldier's awakening process and copying the experimental data. Jarvis, contact Commander Hill, tell her about the situation here, and send her a copy of the data. Yes, sir. With business settled, it was time for personal grudges. Tony looked at the sleeping Bucky, his eyes shifting between anger and reason. Jarvis, retrieve James Buchanan Barnes' biographical file, along with the latest information. Yes, sir. Jarvis's voice rang out, his tone and manner as usual. Military files. James Buchanan Barnes, born in 1917 in Shelbyville, Indiana, USA. During World War II, he joined the military. Later, he became Captain America's assistant, Steve Rogers, and participated in numerous attacks on fascist strongholds alongside Captain America. Towards the end of World War II, he went missing after falling off a cliff during a raid on Dr. Zola. Hydra files. After falling off the cliff, James Buchanan Barnes was found by Hydra. Dr. Arnim Zola brainwashed and controlled him, and installed a new metal arm in his broken arm, making him a key weapon of Hydra, the Winter Soldier. He was then subjected to a cycle of freezing, unfreezing, and mission execution. Tony listened quietly as Jarvis finished reading Bucky's biography, his expression shifting between anger and uncertainty. Crack. Just then, the sound of shattering glass rang out. Bucky's metallic left arm pierced through the nutrient tank and emerged. His gaze locked onto Tony. Seeing this, Tony was more pleased than surprised. You came out just in time, Bucky. His expression blank, ignored Tony's words and stepped forward, throwing a punch straight at him. Tony didn't rush to retreat, shifting his feet and dodging Bucky's metallic left arm. Then, he circled to Bucky's right and threw a punch. Bucky raised his right arm to block. At this moment, the genetically modified Winter Soldier Bucky versus the luminous energy evolved human Tony. Bang! A muffled sound rang out, and Bucky staggered, losing his balance. Tony seized the opportunity, stepping forward and landing a powerful punch on Bucky's face. Injured, Bucky struggled to regain his balance and could only swing his left arm, trying to force Tony back. Tony quickly crouched and swept his leg, dodging Bucky's metallic left arm while simultaneously counterattacking. Bang! Bucky fell to the ground again, but quickly rolled away to create distance and stood up again. Taking advantage of the distance between them, Tony cast a spell with both hands, summoning a small energy shield, the Red Ring of Lagarter. It wasn't that there weren't more powerful spells, but Tony just wanted to beat Bucky up to vent his anger. The Red Ring of Lagarter was enough. The next moment, the two were grappling again. With the energy shield protecting him, Tony's concerns about Bucky's metal left arm were greatly reduced. And after months of enhancement with the shimmering white energy, Tony's physical abilities had now surpassed Bucky's outdated version of a cyborg in every way. Bang! 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 After a fierce exchange, Bucky was bruised and battered. Tony, drenched in sweat and seething with rage, was also there. At that moment, the SHIELD agents had stormed the secret base and arrived at the laboratory. Leading them was Bucky's childhood friend and best buddy, Steve Rogers. Bucky, Steve's excited voice was met with a punch from Bucky's metal left arm. Steve barely managed to react, raising his shield to block. Bucky, it's me, Steve. Bucky ignored him, using his right hand to deflect Steve's vibranium shield and deliver a straight kick. Bang! Caught off guard, Steve was sent flying. Tony watched from the sidelines. He observed that Bucky, despite being brainwashed, still retained some rationality. Tony, what happened? Why doesn't Bucky recognize me? Steve quickly got up after rolling twice on the ground to dissipate the impact, asking Tony, who had arrived first. He's been brainwashed and controlled, he's lost his memories, he's probably like a robot now, Tony explained. Help me, Tony, let's subdue Bucky together. Be careful not to hurt him, okay, Tony agreed. Having vented his anger, he felt much better. Bucky was merely the weapon used to kill his parents, the mastermind behind it all was the real culprit. Chapter 130 Bertrand Russell in Poverty. With Tony and Steve working together, little Bucky was easily dealt with. Tony, how did you become so strong? Steve asked curiously in the vehicle transporting Bucky and the other Winter Soldier back to the SHIELD base. During the battle, Tony wasn't wearing his suit. He fought entirely with his bare hands, helping Steve capture Bucky. This greatly surprised Steve. Tony said seriously, I do 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups, 100 squats every day, plus running 10 kilometers. Believe me, Steve, if you stick to it, You'll undergo a qualitative change." Steve's face darkened. He naturally didn't believe Tony's nonsense. Since using the gene serum to transform from a weak, poorly built boy into a super soldier, he had become a fitness fanatic. His daily training volume was many times higher than that, yet he hadn't seen any qualitative change. After a while, Tony added, "Of course, I also need a few other small help, like magical energy." Steve shook his head helplessly, no longer listening to Tony's nonsense, and looked at Bucky with concern. After the battle, Tony had explained to him in detail Bucky's current situation. "Tony, do you think Bucky can recover?" "Of course," Tony replied to Steve without hesitation, and explained. "Even a soul that becomes confused after entering hell can recover if properly nurtured. Let alone mere brainwashing." Steve nodded, relieved. Hell and such, that topic was a bit too advanced for him. But he still understood what Tony meant. Bucky could recover. "And I also need him to tell me, after he recovers his memories, who ordered him to kill my parents." Tony's voice suddenly rang out again, making Steve's heart jump again. "Bucky killed your parents, Tony?" Steve's voice was filled with disbelief. He looked at Tony, who was sitting calmly beside him, and hesitated. "I know, you want to ask what happened. In 1991, Bucky attacked my parents and staged it as a car accident. I also know you're trying to say that Bucky was being controlled, that he wasn't acting on his own, that it wasn't his intention." Tony answered his own question. Steve nodded. "Tony, your father Howard, Bucky, and I were friends and comrades during World War II. If Bucky had been conscious then, he certainly wouldn't have hurt your parents." Tony shook his head. For Steve, World War II had only been a little over a year ago, so their camaraderie was naturally deep. But for Bucky and Howard, the war had ended 40 or 50 years before the incident. With so much time without contact, how much of their camaraderie remained was questionable. "Steve, I assure you, I won't hurt Sergeant Barnes until he recovers. But once he's awake, if he was conscious when he killed my parents, don't blame me." Tony's voice was calm. He was very composed. Faced with a composed Tony, Steve couldn't find any reason to refute him. California, at one of Tony's seaside villas. "Tony, do you want my help to quickly restore Sergeant Barnes?" The speaker was Russell. At this time, 2 hours had passed since Steve and Tony captured Bucky. The two, impatient, took Bucky directly and returned to Tony's residence. Originally, Tony planned to nurture Bucky's soul with his own mental energy. But coincidentally, Russell, who had just returned from the blood dimension, heard that Tony had temporarily finished his work and came looking for him without stopping. "So no, Russell. If you help Barnes restore, I can save time and get into the debugging work of the cloning equipment sooner. In the end, you'll benefit," Tony corrected Russell's statement. Theoretically speaking, this was a division of labor, not Russell helping him. "Okay, no problem." Russell didn't care about such small details. Russell snapped his fingers, and a burst of shimmering white energy shot out, entering Bucky's body and quickly purifying his soul. Although Russell was now energy poor again, he could still spare a few units of attribute points. During his trip to the blood dimension, he had extracted 2 billion units of energy and forced the blood god to sign a series of unilateral equal treaties. One of these treaties stipulated that the blood god would give him 10 million units of energy annually as a gift to maintain a friendly relationship with Russell. This number was less than Russell had anticipated. However, after the blood god's explanation, Russell roughly understood. The main energy source of the hell dimension was also the incidental energy within the souls, the energy Russell absorbed during the first stage of his panel. Most of the dead souls circulated within the universe, heading towards the underworld constructed by their respective gods. Only souls without faith were drawn by nature to hell through a mysterious transit station. The number of hell dimensions far exceeded that of the real universe. Typically, a hell dimension could only accommodate the souls of a few or a dozen planets. This is why countless helllords dream of invading the real world through dimensional nodes, hoping to make a fortune and kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. Like that handsome guy in a certain dark dimension. While waiting for Bucky to regain his senses, Russell had a sudden thought and opened his attribute panel. Attribute points. 66 4399, Divine Body. 1803, The Divine Body is still a long way from 10,000, he needs to work harder to earn more energy. Speaking of earning energy, Russell happened to have a business tycoon in nearby. "Tony, if I want to earn energy, what should I do?" What do you mean?" Tony was puzzled. Energy, isn't it all drawn from the multiverse by mages day after day, year after year, and then accumulated, or borrowing from magical entities in other dimensions? Tony, did you earn this huge Stark Industries empire by working for others? Russell gave an example. Russell, the business model of ordinary people is different from the business model between mages and magical entities. Tell me first how you collect energy. We need to analyze specific problems. Hearing Russell's analogy, Tony became interested. Of course, not in earning it, but in earning energy. Well, there are several methods. The most important one is to find a dimensional demon and then try to extort it. Usually, you can earn several hundred million units of energy at a time. A secondary method is to convert physical energy in the universe into magical energy. Or, you can absorb the accompanying energy from dead souls. This method usually allows you to collect tens of thousands of units of energy per day. Chapter 131. Russell's eyes lit up. Trying to extort a dimensional demons, Tony blurted out, a sudden thought striking him. Mephisto, Tony remembered. A few months ago, the Avengers assembled for the first time to rescue Russell in the quantum realm. Instead, they stumbled upon Russell, two ancient ones, and Mephisto playing mahjong. And, making a deal. Russell nodded, confirming Tony's guess. That's right, in the quantum realm, I earned 2 billion units of energy from Mephisto. Hearing this number, Tony couldn't help but sigh. Russell, if you want to earn a lot of energy, it seems you should still focus on dimensional demons. Russell nodded, he thought so too. A simple mathematical calculation. 2 billion percent 30,000/day 66,667 days 183 years. The energy extorted from just one-dimensional demons is equivalent to Russell working for 183 years. And that doesn't even include the stable annual income afterward. Russell, aren't you afraid of failing? After his initial exclamation, Tony asked again. Earning energy from dimensional demons is certainly high yield, but it's also high risk. Russell smiled confidently. No matter how many dimensional demons there are, they are no match for me. Not only that, but there's also the problem of magical energy erosion. Don't worry, that won't be a problem either. Tony, have you forgotten about my special energy? Mentioning Russell's special energy, Tony immediately connected the two things. So, Russell, you can convert ordinary magical energy into your kind of special energy that has no effect. That's right, Russell nodded. What's the ratio? 1:1. Energy exchange to earn the difference is a good way to earn energy, Tony said thoughtfully. But the energy transfer problem is not easy to solve, Russell said helplessly. No, Russell, you don't understand business. Energy doesn't have an expiration date, so this problem doesn't need to be solved at all. Treat your special energy like a commodity. You can find distributors and have them help you sell it. That way, Russell, you can also earn energy from mages and other gods, Tony explained. Russell's eyes lit up. A blinding light flashed, making Tony and Steve unable to open their eyes. Tony, that's definitely a good idea, Russell nodded in satisfaction. In business, consulting professionals is always a good idea. It's another way to accumulate energy. Once this sales channel is established, the energy earned will probably be no less than what he could extort from dimensional demons. No, wait. After extorting them, the dimensional demons can also become his distributors. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Right now, in the initial energy accumulation phase, he can only keep harassing the dimensional demons. With this newfound idea, Russell thought of something else. He could emulate Galactus and cultivate agents to help him find suitable dimensional demons to extort. Jarvis, get me some wipes. Tony covered his eyes, took the wipes Jarvis offered, wiped his eyes, and complained to Russell. Hey, Russell, what's wrong with your eyes? They suddenly look like flashbangs. That's called a sudden realization. It means suddenly understanding something or suddenly thinking of something, having a new way to solve a problem. I'm praising you, Tony, Russell explained seriously. Shit, Tony couldn't help but swear. Russell, you'd better stop praising Tony. I don't think he'll like that kind of praise. Meanwhile, Steve also received a wet wipe from Jarvis. He rubbed it against his eyes, feeling a little better. Since Steve underwent the super soldier gene injection experiment, his physical abilities had greatly improved. Even looking directly at the sun was no problem. This was the first time he'd been blinded by bright light. All I can say is, Russell is really inhuman. At this moment, Steve's idealized view of Russell shattered. Russell's proactive action against the cosmic bullies, the Dark Order, had once made Steve think of Russell as a person of great kindness and love for all living beings in the universe. Steve, suddenly, a slightly hesitant voice rang out. Is that you, Steve? And where is this? Bucky, the Winter Soldier, had awakened. Ignoring the slight sting in his eyes, Steve removed the wet wipe and opened his eyes to look at Bucky. Bucky, it's me. Steve stood up and gave Bucky a big bear hug. Then, he quietly inquired about Bucky's experiences after falling off the cliff. Just as the two were catching up, Tony opened his eyes and looked at Bucky. A dangerous glint flashed in his eyes. After a brief moment of excitement, Steve remembered the important matter and asked worriedly, Bucky, do you remember what you did in 1991? Bucky opened his mouth, then closed it again. He also noticed Tony's gaze on him from the sofa. In an instant, countless fragments of memory flooded back, helping him piece together the events. I know what I did, I'm sorry, Tony. Bucky lowered his head guiltily, his voice low. I know I hurt you, but I want you to know I'm sorry. You have no right to apologize. Tony's voice was flat and cold. This wasn't what he wanted to hear. That's right, I don't deserve to live. Bucky's body relaxed, completely without resistance, seemingly seeking death. Bucky, this isn't true. It wasn't you who did those things. It's all Hydra's fault. Seeing this, Steve quickly defended Bucky. I can speak for myself, Steve. Bucky slowly raised his head to look at Tony. I did those things, I take responsibility. But I'm truly sorry, Steve is right, Hydra is at fault. Sergeant Barnes, I don't need your apology. I just need you to tell me who ordered you to assassinate my parents, Howard Stark and Maria Stark. Tony's tone remained calm, but less cold. Bucky thought carefully before replying, I don't know his name. I only know that others call him Colonel, a Hydra colonel who infiltrated the former Soviet Union. You should remember what he looked like, Bucky, Tony continued. I remember, Bucky nodded. Okay, then describe him. Jarvis, based on Sergeant Barnes' description, draw a sketch and search for it. He is, as Bucky dictated, a sketch of a middle-aged Russian man appeared on the screen. Jarvis, deduce what he looks like now, Tony continued, instructing Jarvis to deduce the Colonel's current appearance based on what he looked like more than 20 years ago. As far as I remember, the Colonel's appearance hasn't changed. He should have also been injected with a special gene serum, Bucky reminded him. Jarvis was borrowed from a version of the Winter Soldier's apology made by Hish. Chapter 132 The First Clients, The Wizards of Camartage. After arranging for Jarvis to retrieve the portrait, Tony didn't make things difficult for Bucky and simply let him and Steve leave. Seeing there was no more drama to watch, Russell arranged a time for the equipment delivery with Tony and then left Tony's mansion. After the show, it was time to get down to business. After all, he was now the impoverished Russell. Nepal, Camartage. Russell's timing wasn't ideal. Due to the time difference, it was early morning in Camartage. But it didn't matter, some people always like to stay up late. In the courtyard, Mordo was gazing at the starry sky, staring intently at the full moon. Brother Mordo, it's late, why aren't you resting yet? Mordo snapped out of his reverie, looking at Russell emerging from the portal, and smiled. Mage Russell, aren't you still awake too? Russell shook his head, explaining, it's different. I just came from New York, where it's still noon. Mordo also shook his head and chuckled. For mages who had mastered portal magic, the time zone division caused by planetary rotation was indeed quite unfriendly. After laughing, Mordo explained why he was still awake so late at night. Recently, two more novice mages, ignoring warnings during their practice, absorbed dark energy, causing mental damage. As the head instructor of Camartage, this wasn't the first time Mordo had encountered such novice mages. But each time, he felt sorry for them. They should recover after a period of rest, right? Why are you so troubled, senior brother Mordo? Russell asked curiously. Mordo sighed and explained to Russell, although they should recover after a period of rest, each time they absorb dark energy, their inner demons grow stronger. No one knows when these inner demons will hatch and completely erode a mage's mind. Russell nodded thoughtfully. He practiced the deep blue stat-adding method, which was different from ordinary mages. Although he had suffered from the effects of dark energy, it hadn't been significant. He had absolutely no inner demons. Senior brother Mordo, do you remember the attribute less energy we talked about before? Russell opened his palm, a ball of shimmering white energy floating on it. Mordo's gaze was immediately drawn to it. Mage Russell, didn't you say before that this energy wasn't enough? If it's provided free of charge, then naturally it's not enough. But if it's traded, then it's enough. Trade? How do we trade? Mordo asked, puzzled. Russell explained, usually, when mages absorb energy in the multiverse, they encounter many different kinds of energy. Among them, a few kinds of light energy that have a positive impact on mages can be absorbed, while dark energy, which has a negative impact, cannot be absorbed. So, let the mages bring back this dark energy as well. Then, according to a certain ratio, exchange it for my shimmering white energy. In fact, the amount of light energy and dark energy is almost equal. It's just that the mages absorb more light energy, so there seems to be less light energy left. And with less light energy, the mage's cultivation becomes more difficult. With cultivation becoming more difficult, some mages begin to have wicked thoughts and set their sights on dark energy. Master Russell, what do you need this dark energy for? Mordo asked worriedly. Although you are powerful, don't be careless. A small leak can sink a great ship. The lotus rises from the mud unsullied. Brother Mordo, this shimmering white energy is transformed from dark energy. Russell didn't mince words, praising himself without hesitation. But Mordo still hesitated. When he first started cultivating, the Ancient One warned him not to easily absorb dark energy. But later, he still made the same mistake as those two apprentice sorcerers, unable to resist the temptation, and absorb dark attribute energy. This bred a demon in his heart, which he only suppressed with the help of the Ancient One. He didn't want Russell to make a similar mistake due to carelessness. Master Mordo, you don't need to worry about Russell. He has a greater secret, and this dark energy won't easily affect him. Just as Russell and Mordo were talking, the Ancient One also came to the courtyard. Ancient One, Master, after bowing and greeting, Mordo raised another question. But won't the other mages worry that this energy is unsafe? Magic is all about the source. To avoid being manipulated, mages secretly absorb energy fragments from the multiverse during their cultivation. They absorb a little here, a little there. Even if the energy source has a problem, the impact is small because the amount absorbed is small. If the trade begins, Russell's luminous white energy will definitely account for a significant portion of the mage's daily cultivation. If Russell has a problem, the impact on the mages will be substantial. Let the other mages choose freely, Russell said calmly. Russell's rise to power is too recent. Although his achievements are impressive, he hasn't yet established credibility. If the Ancient One were providing this energy, Mordo would never have asked this question. But for most mages, exchanging dark energy for luminous white energy is a pure profit. There will definitely be mages who will exchange. And when the first mage absorbs the luminous white energy and finds that their physique, spirit, and lifespan have increased, even if the luminous white energy may still have hidden dangers, more and more mages will come to exchange for it. Vishanti's white magic forbids extending lifespan. Mordo, during morning study tomorrow, tell the other mages about this. If any mages want to trade, have them come to me, Ancient One spoke, confirming the deal. Russell, give me some of this energy, and I'll vouch for you. Okay, thank you, mage. Russell thanked her, then took out a ball of 100,000 units of shimmering white energy and solemnly handed it to Ancient One. Ancient One, too little. Russell took out 5 more balls of the same size of shimmering white energy. Still too little. Russell, where's your energy? You must have just returned from another dimension, right? Ancient One asked. That's all I have left. I absorbed the rest, Russell replied. Ancient One sighed helplessly. Russell, when you do business, don't you keep more capital? Mage, I didn't originally intend to do business. Never mind, let's leave it at that for now. What ratio do you plan to sell it at? 5 times, I guess. We're all fellow disciples, so I won't go too high, Russell said casually. Kamar Taj only has a small fraction of its sorcerers. The real money comes from the gods on various planets. Mordo's words reminded Russell that the sorcerers would worry about the safety of the energy, and so would other clients. For security reasons, they might not be willing to support Russell's business. In that case, other methods might have to be used. Chapter 133 What do you think of me? After finalizing the transaction ratio, Russell returned to the New York Reading Room Lounge and lay down. Attribute points. 64,399. Opening his attribute panel and looking at the 5-figure balance, Russell felt his life was filled with gloom. I'm possibly, Perhaps, likely, most likely, the poorest ancient god. Looks like the pace of my initial energy accumulation needs to be accelerated. Knock knock knock, come in. Russell was surprised to see a thin, small girl enter. Jaya, did you need something? The visitor was none other than the Skrull princess, Jaya, who approached Russell somewhat awkwardly, carrying 2 cups of milk tea. Here, mango pomelo sago, less ice, less sugar. I heard from Wanda that besides grass jelly, you drink this quite often. Thanks, Jaya. Russell took the milk tea and drank it himself. Jaya sat down opposite Russell, hesitated for a moment, then mustered her courage and asked, Russell, are the Skrulls doomed, huh? Russell looked up, surprised, at Jaya, wondering how she had come to that conclusion. Why do you say that? Captain Carol returned to Earth with bad news. In space, the Kree Empire's pursuit of the Skrulls is intensifying. Jaya's voice slowly rose, filled with grief and fear. Wait, Russell interrupted Jaya. Jaya, tell me first how the Kree and Skrulls started their conflict. I don't leave Earth much, so I don't know much about what's happening in space. Russell wasn't entirely unaware of the feud between the Kree and the Skrulls, but the versions varied across different universes. As a multiverse expert, Russell adhered to the principle of seeking truth from facts, avoiding metaphysics and stereotypes. Initially, the Skrulls were a race caught in the crossfire as the Kree expanded their cosmic territory. But as the Kree waged large-scale cosmic wars, to have a pretext, or perhaps to create a plausible reason, the Kree fabricated the Skrull threat theory. Using the pretext that the Skrulls threatened Kree safety, they hunted down the Skrulls everywhere. At the same time, they waged wars of conquest. This time, Gaia's voice was filled with hatred. Russell nodded, signaling Gaia to continue. Now, the number of Skrulls still alive in the universe is dwindling. More than 10 years ago, Captain Carol promised to help us find a new home to escape the Kree's pursuit. But until now, we still haven't found one. Gaia took a slight breath and continued. Now, a voice has emerged within the race. It's about invading Earth and taking it for ourselves. After saying this, Jaya looked at Russell, wanting to observe his expression. To her disappointment, Russell showed no change in expression, still focused on drinking his milk tea. Go on, I'm listening. Russell, you'll definitely intervene, won't you? Even though you said you have no prejudice against the Skrulls, if they succeed, you'll definitely intervene. That will be the end for the Skrulls. Jaya's voice trembled as she nervously stared at Russell, seeing him slowly nod. You're right, Jaya. But you're wrong about one thing. The Skrulls won't succeed. Russell lowered his head, finished his drink, and then looked up at Jaya. You came to me, what do you want me to help you with? Jaya pondered for a long time before slowly speaking. I want you to help me kill Gravik. He's the leader of the Skrull faction that advocates invading Earth. A cup of milk tea is far from enough for me. Little girl, Russell looked at the empty cup, and the next moment, the cup automatically refilled. Also, don't try to seduce me. I have a girlfriend, and we have a great relationship. Jaya pursed her lips before speaking. Russell, what do you think of me? Russell, you don't think I'm being sarcastic, do you? Seeing Russell's misunderstanding, Jaya quickly explained, I mean, what do you think of my aptitude? Do I have a chance to become the Sorcerer Supreme? Wanda told you that? Russell asked. Yes, Jaya nodded. When did your relationship become so good that she even told you this? Russell asked curiously. He remembered that Jaya and Wanda had only met for the first time a few days ago. I found out that we were college classmates. I've been tutoring her these past few days, Jaya explained in her low voice. Russell remained silent. He still felt it was unreasonable. After scrutinizing Jaya for a moment, Russell shook his head. Jaya, your talent is perhaps a little short of that of the Sorcerer Supreme, or rather, a little short of the Sorcerer Supreme Russell required. Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, possesses chaos magic. Loki has already shown talent in time magic, and in some versions, he has also had the highlights of being the god of story and the god of time. Tony, although his magical talent is a bit lacking, he is a tech giant, and in some versions, he is even the god of machines. It can be said that each member of Russell's Sorcerer Supreme team possesses unique skills. Super Skrulls possess the ability to copy, and can copy the abilities of imitators. This mechanism seems excellent, but it's only on the surface. Without improving its own strength, the ability to copy will always be a defective product or simply impossible to copy. Jaya remained silent. This wasn't the first time Russell had told her this. However, besides becoming the sorcerer supreme and protecting the real world for me, I have something else I need someone to do for me. What is it? Gia asked eagerly. I need an apostle to help me find another dimension. Or rather, to help me find the hell dimension, Russell's voice echoed softly. It's a dangerous job, it requires traveling to different universes and different dimensions. Russell's initial idea was to recruit Spider-Man as an apostle to help find the hell dimension. Spider-Man, backed by the web of life and fate, could more easily traverse the multiverse. But Spider-Men are mostly morally upright. They might be busy fighting evil on the streets and have no time for the important task Russell assigned. Gia, with her super Skrull replication ability, could quickly form a formidable fighting force. Then, can I find a planet for the Skrulls to settle down in another universe? Gia quickly digested the information in Russell's words and grasped a key word: different universes. Once in another universe, the crew would naturally be free from their pursuit. Russell nodded, of course. However, the difficulty of a few people traversing the multiverse is vastly different from that of millions. Gia Yan, if you want me to help you with this, you might need to work for me for a very, very long time. Gia Yan nodded emphatically. Chapter 134 The First Apostle. Since you have no objections, Jaya, let's sign the apostle contract. Seeing Jaya not in agreement, Russell took out a brand new parchment scroll, swept it over with his divine power, and aged it. Holding this newly created ancient parchment scroll, Russell used his divine power to inscribe words. A long and detailed document defined the obligations and rights of both parties. Then, he handed it to Jaya. Read it carefully first. You can raise any questions you have. I'm a conscientious boss. Jaya took the parchment scroll. The first sentence that caught her eye was, the final interpretation right of this contract belongs to Russell. Jaya remained calm and continued reading, her gaze falling on the work content. Search for the hell dimension and assess its suitability. Find a method to track the whereabouts of souls on life-bearing planets in this universe or other multiverses. Criteria for judging suitability. First, does the dimension possess a large amount of magical energy? Second, is the rule of the dimensional lord stable? A large amount of magical energy. What does that mean? The rule of the dimensional lord is stable. What does that mean? Gia pointed to two items on the job description and asked Russell. Russell first reluctantly took out 10,000 units of attribute points and handed them to Gia, then patiently explained, this is 10,000 units of energy. A large amount refers to more than 100 million units of magical energy. The stability of dimensional lord rule is unnecessary for a normally developing civilization. The key is to find those dimensional lords who practice brutal rule. Firstly, there is no moral pressure. Secondly, after overthrowing the original dimensional lord, a new dimensional lord can be supported to develop another trading business. In the long run, the trading business has higher potential. However, a normally stable magical civilization, for security reasons, is unlikely to engage in large-scale trade with Russell. Therefore, Russell plans to support a group of forces indirectly under his control. The apostle contract instead of a labor contract already reveals Russell's ambition. What is an apostle? A disciple who preaches. Gia nodded thoughtfully and continued reading, occasionally confirming a few terms with Russell. Finally, the contract was signed. Russell, why hasn't anything changed after signing the contract? Gia Yang asked curiously. Usually, shouldn't there be some special effects when signing a magical contract? And then, if it's broken, a punishment mechanism will be triggered, Russell retorted. Gia Yang, you've probably watched too many movies. This is just an ordinary parchment scroll. Besides, even if there's some god of contracts, his protection isn't as good as mine. This was just an ordinary parchment scroll. What was extraordinary was its owner. After putting away the contract, Russell took out two pagers, one red and one green, and instructed Gia. The red one is for when you encounter danger at work. As soon as you press it, I will immediately locate and teleport you. The green one is for when you find a suitable dimension. After pressing it, it will automatically mark the coordinates. Okay, Gia carefully put away the two pagers. Remember, don't press the red one randomly. But if you feel danger, press it immediately. Your life is your own, Russell reminded her again. Okay, Gia nodded. Russell got up and gestured for Gia to follow him to the beverage shop next door to find Wanda. The energy I just gave you will subtly strengthen your spirit and physique. Meditation can accelerate this process. During this time, Gia, you should learn meditation from Wanda to improve your strength. With Gia's current strength, There are too many things in other dimensions and the universe that could threaten her life. Russell didn't want to be a babysitter, rescuing people every day. The beverage shop was still packed. The queue was almost a long line. Wanda and Pietro were helping their parents serve guests. Although they were busy, the family was happy. Seeing Russell come in, Wanda greeted him with a smile. "Russell, what would you like to drink? Mango pomelo sago, less ice, less sugar." Russell silently threw down his cup and asked for a new one. Although he could use magic to refill his cup infinitely, that was soulless. "Okay, please wait a moment." Wanda turned and walked towards the bar to make it herself. Her movements were gentle and skillful, each step full of elegance. It seemed that this was not making an inexpensive drink. Instead, it was a master craftsman meticulously sculpting his work. "Russell, it's done, thank you, Wanda." Russell took the cup, tasted it, and praised, "Wanda, your skills have improved again, only the taste remained the same." "Thank you." Wanda smiled and thanked him for the compliment, then, seeing that the two showed no sign of leaving, asked, "Russell, Jaya, did you need something?" "Yes, Wanda. We have a favor to ask you." Wanda looked around and, finding no seats downstairs, led Russell and Jaya upstairs to the residential area. Entering the living room, they sat down on the sofa. Russell got straight to the point. "Wanda, I hope you can teach Jaya how to meditate and practice." A glint of light flashed in Wanda's eyes, her face showing surprise. "Russell, you promised Jaya? I will definitely teach her well, so she too can have the opportunity to become the Sorcerer Supreme." Russell slowly shook his head. He knew it must have been Wanda's idea for Jaya. "No, not the Sorcerer Supreme, but my apostle." "Apostle? What does that mean?" Wanda asked, puzzled. Russell explained, "Simply put, it means working for me." "Oh," Wanda nodded thoughtfully, then became eager to try. "Russell, do you need my help, Wanda?" In terms of strength, she was definitely qualified. Wanda was steadily and rapidly improving, and in a while, she would reach a level where she could fearlessly face ordinary dimensional lords. The problem was that the influence of chaos magic on Wanda's mind remained a hidden danger. "Wanda, Gaia will tell you what needs to be done later. If you're willing to help, you can work with Gaia." After careful consideration, Russell agreed to Wanda's help. The influence of chaos magic would always exist. They couldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Of the three members of the Sorcerer Supreme, Wanda had the least combat experience. A little training would be good for her. "Then, I'll leave Gaia to you, Wanda. You teach me the meditation once, and I'll watch from the side and see if there's anything that needs improvement." "Okay," the two women responded in unison, showing a remarkable understanding. Afterward, Russell quietly observed the energy flow and absorption during their meditation. He would occasionally offer reminders, prompting Jaya to adjust and increase the speed at which she absorbed the luminous white energy, until the energy absorption efficiency reached its peak and could not be increased further. Chapter 135. This is just my safe house. At a secret SHIELD base. Director Fury, I've never seen any of these agents before. Sitting in a medical room converted from a conference room, Coulson peered through the window at the agents coming and going outside, puzzled. He was a veteran of SHIELD for decades, an agent at level 8. He wouldn't say he knew everyone in SHIELD, but to have no recollection of anyone at the entire base was too absurd. Moreover, during his brief tenure as head of SHIELD in place of Nick Fury, he had reviewed the files, and this overseas base didn't seem to be listed. Facing Coulson's question, Nick Fury remained calm. "This base was secretly built by me. The agents inside were also secretly recruited by me. They don't exist in SHIELD's official records. Coulson, remember, as an elite agent, you must have your own safe house. And I just have a few more safe houses than I do." Coulson remained silent. The base before him was equipped with various light and heavy weapons, aircraft, a helipad, training rooms, and medical facilities. This couldn't be explained simply by a safe house. Seeing Coulson remain silent, Nick Fury brought up the main topic. "I heard that Agent Hill discovered and breached several Hydra secret bases. Coulson, tell me what they found." "Okay," Coulson nodded, gathering his thoughts, and then began to recount. In this operation, a total of 7 Hydra secret bases were discovered and destroyed. The most important discovery came from a Siberian base. In that base, they found Sergeant Barnes, who attacked Howard and his wife, along with 5 other genetically engineered warriors. They were named the Winter Soldier by Hydra. Does Tony know about this? Nick Fury suddenly asked. Coulson's expression was strange. Yes. Sergeant Barnes was the one Tony and Captain Steve found. And afterwards, Sergeant Barnes and Captain Steve left Tony's villa in California unharmed. Nick Fury pondered deeply, ignoring the throbbing pain in the back of his head. Something's strange about this. Sergeant Barnes isn't the real killer of the Howards. The real killer is the mastermind. That mastermind has also been abandoned. These bases were deliberately thrown out by Hydra. Firstly, to cut their losses and survive. Secondly, perhaps to divert our attention. Why do you say that, Director Fury? Coulson asked, puzzled. A super soldier genetic experiment base shouldn't be discovered so easily. Even if it were discovered, several super soldiers could easily be moved. Unless they were discarded, Nick Fury explained. So what should we do now? Coulson asked. We can only take advantage of their discarded pawns for now, and then intensify our internal investigations. Hydra isn't so easy to completely eliminate, Nick Fury said helplessly. Faced with Hydra's desperate measure of cutting off its tail to survive, he had no better solution. For a moment, the room fell silent. Shortly after, Coulson took his leave. As soon as Coulson left, Carol entered the room. Carol, what's the situation with the Skrulls? Nick Fury forced himself to be alert and asked. Talos, the Skrull chieftain, is somewhat dissatisfied that I haven't found a habitable planet. But generally, he can still keep his people in check, Carol said frankly. Well, thank you for your hard work, Carol, Nick Fury said politely. However, he was increasingly troubled. Carol hadn't obtained any useful information at all. He could control most of them. But there were a small group he couldn't. Who were these people? Once the Skrulls' shape-shifting abilities spread, they were like fish in the sea, very difficult to find again. It seemed the Skrulls were getting impatient. Nick Fury worried inwardly. But then he remembered Russell was still on Earth, and Nick Fury's heart calmed down. But then, he worried again. His wife was also a Skrull. What if Russell exterminated her too? If Russell knew Nick Fury's question, he would definitely answer him. Nick Fury was more worried about his wife running away with Gaia than about her being exterminated. New York, Massimikov's drinks shop. Russell withdrew his attention from Gaia and Wanda, took out a copy of The Call of the Wild, and began to read intently. He had been busy for most of the day, his workload had exceeded his limit, and the rest was leisure time. And leisure time always passed quickly. The next day, after Tony finished setting up the equipment and delivered it to the rooftop of Russell's bookstore, Russell and his group prepared to depart for the amazing Spider-Man world. However, the team size was a few people larger than originally planned. Russell, Ghost Gwen, and Extraordinary Gwen were the original trio. Wanda, Gaia, and Little Gwen were the three added later. Bringing Wanda and Gaia was like bringing interns. Their main purpose was to demonstrate to them how to find the Hell Dimension and assess its suitability. Bringing Little Gwen was simply because they already had so many people, one more wouldn't hurt. As for Little Gwen's safety, Russell hadn't considered it. A mere nightmare wasn't worthy of his concern. Hades himself would be more suitable. Are you all ready? If you're ready, let's go, Russell asked, checking on the group. Ready, Russell. Gwen carefully checked her backpack, making sure she had all the necessary clothes, snacks, drinks, and homework, before speaking earnestly. Seeing this, the others couldn't help but chuckle. Let's go then. As soon as she finished speaking, golden magical sparks appeared out of thin air, spinning rapidly. A portal to another world slowly opened. Russell's divine power silently surged forth, forming a protective barrier around their bodies. Then, he took the lead and walked towards the portal. Behind the portal was a perfectly preserved New York City. At this moment, the night was enchanting. Extraordinary Gwen, should we go see where you died first, or settle down at your house? Russell asked. Cloning Extraordinary Gwen's body required obtaining her living cells. But so much time had passed, Extraordinary Gwen was long dead. Unless she had preserved them beforehand, obtaining her living cells would require using time magic to steal them from the past. The most cost-effective way, naturally, was to return to the point immediately after her death. I want to go back and see Mom first. Extraordinary Gwen hesitated for a moment, then said, I'm sorry for taking up your time. But I really want to see Helen first. It's alright, Extraordinary Gwen. We, except for Little Gwen, all understand you. A few months ago, apart from Little Gwen, none of the four here could even muster a mother. Gaia's mother had also died when she was young. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, The Amazing Spider-Man Universe. Earth 120,703, Queens, New York City, in front of Gwen's house. The extraordinary Gwen walked slowly forward, a touch of trepidation on her face. She raised her hand and knocked. No sound came out, her hand simply passed through. The extraordinary Gwen simply walked through the door and went inside. Little Gwen wanted to follow, but Russell stopped her in time. Little Gwen, what are you doing, going in, Russell? Little Gwen looked at Russell questioningly. Reach out and feel it. The extraordinary Gwen is a spirit, she can ignore physical contact and go in, but you can't, Russell explained. Little Gwen was skeptical but reached out and touched it. There was a touch, she couldn't pass right through. But, we're just standing outside waiting, aren't we going in? Little Gwen asked again, puzzled. There's no one inside, Little Gwen. The one who answered was Ghost Gwen. The people outside, except for Little Gwen, all had good hearing. With a little attention, they could hear no breathing inside. In fact, not only was the house empty now, but it had been uninhabited for some time. The flowers on the balcony had withered and died. The furniture, though neatly arranged, was covered with a thin layer of dust. All these signs indicated that the house had been vacant for some time. A moment later, Supernatural Gwen emerged from the house, her expression tinged with sadness. Helen isn't here, she's probably back with my grandfather. Let's go to Long Island, New York. Supernatural Gwen, point us in the right direction, east. Russell nodded, his divine power lifting them up, and they flew in the direction Supernatural Gwen indicated. Russell, are you directionally challenged? Ghost Gwen suddenly asked. With Russell's mental power, he could scan the entire city of New York in an instant. The fact that Russell didn't know where Long Island was puzzled Ghost Gwen. Gwen, you know too much, we're here, Supernatural Gwen suddenly spoke, interrupting Russell and Ghost Gwen's banter. Below them was a three-story detached villa with a courtyard. In the courtyard, a middle-aged woman was tending to the flowers and plants. Several people descended from the sky and landed outside the villa. Ghost Gwen stepped forward and rang the doorbell. A short while later, the middle-aged woman, after observing them through the peephole, opened the door. A handsome young man, three graceful young girls, and a naive little girl stood out. This group couldn't be bad people. Hello, what can I do for you? The middle-aged woman's voice was gentle, her tone quite similar to that of Gwen Stacy. However, her face was now etched with the marks of time. Her temples were gray, adding to her aged appearance. Hello, Helen. Russell's hand swept across Helen's eyes, shimmering with white runes. The next moment, Helen Stacy saw another person. Her daughter, Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy was still dressed as she had been on the day she died, a white coat, a purple inner layer, and black knee-high boots. Exactly the same as the corpse she had seen that day. Helen involuntarily covered her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. Is that you, Gwen? It's me, Helen, it's me. Super Gwen's eyes also welled with tears, and she couldn't help but rush forward and hug her mother tightly. She gently stroked the newly formed wrinkles on her mother's face, repeatedly apologizing. I'm sorry, Helen. I made you worry. It's good you're back, it's good you're back. Seeing this touching scene, Ghost Gwen, Wanda, and Gaia felt the same way and couldn't help but wipe away their tears as well. Little Gwen looked at Russell somewhat blankly. She didn't know if she should cry too. Come on, Little Gwen, let's go find a place to sit for a while. I think you must be tired after carrying your backpack for so long. Russell took Little Gwen's hand, walked around Super Gwen and her mother, and headed into the villa. Russell, can you help me carry my backpack? Hearing Russell's reminder, Little Gwen bent over, pretending to be struggling, and asked Russell for help. Russell glanced down at Gwen's cartoon backpack, which featured a cute princess design, exuding a girlish charm. No, this backpack isn't suitable for me. Carry it yourself. Despite saying this, Russell released a wisp of divine power, dispelling the backpack's weight. HMPH. Gwen let out a soft hum, only to find the backpack suddenly lighter. Oh, thank you, Sorcerer Supreme. Russell, entering the villa's living room. A moment later, Ghost Gwen, Wanda, and Gaia followed. A little while later, Supernatural Gwen and Helen also entered. "Excuse me, may I ask, are you angels?" "Here to return my daughter." Helen's gaze immediately fell on Russell. She remembered the shimmering white light that had appeared when Russell's hand brushed past her eyes. Russell slowly shook his head, ignoring Helen's offense. "I am God, but not an angel." "God?" Helen wondered. "Did God look Asian?" "Helen, he's just joking." Ghost Gwen first introduced the group to Helen, then explained the purpose. Russell is a powerful sorcerer with the ability to see souls. He discovered the soul of Extraordinary Gwen in another universe, escorted her back, and will clone a body for her to resurrect her. This process will take about 10 days. There were some deeper reasons that Ghost Gwen didn't tell Helen. There was no need. "Thank you so much, Ghost Gwen." Helen's gaze lingered between Ghost Gwen and Little Gwen, pondering a question. Was her daughter from the parallel world truly her daughter? "By the way, I haven't even entertained you since you've been here so long. I've been incredibly rude." Helen apologized to the group, then went into the kitchen, returning shortly with 5 cups of warm milk. "Thank you, Helen." Wanda and Gaia, who had been observing the situation, finally had a chance to speak. Therefore, Russell noticed them. Should he send them out to work now, or let them rest for a while before starting? That was the question. Russell took a small sip of warm milk, hesitating. But soon, there was no need to hesitate. The girls were already chatting animatedly. "Extraordinary Gwen, you have 3 younger brothers. I'm so envious of you." "None of us have any," Gia sighed. "No, I have a twin brother," Wanda corrected. "Actually, on Earth 404, Pietro was the older brother." "No, I'll have a younger brother soon," Little Gwen interjected earnestly. "Me too," Ghost Gwen added. "Gia, I'm so envious of you guys." "Russell, why don't you guys chat here for a bit? I'll go out and retrieve Extraordinary Gwen's living cells." After saying goodbye to the others, Russell took a step and left. Why could they chat so enthusiastically about such a trivial matter? Chapter 137 The Missing Amazing Spider-Man. Ghost Gwen wasn't wrong. Russell was indeed terrible with directions before becoming an extraordinary. And he remained terrible with directions even after becoming an extraordinary. But that didn't stop Russell from finding the location where Extraordinary Gwen died. He had seen it in fragments of Extraordinary Gwen's memories. A construction site where a clock tower was being repaired. A golden magical spark appeared out of thin air, then exploded, slowly forming a portal. Russell stepped out of the portal. Workers came and went, but no one noticed Russell's sudden appearance. Because he was in the mirror space. Looking at the bustling construction site, Russell's eyes flickered slightly. The next moment, time reversed, and the stars changed rapidly. Finally, this world was frozen into painting. In the picture, the clock tower, which had been mostly repaired, was once again a ruin. In the ruins, Extraordinary Spider-Man held the lifeless Extraordinary Gwen, his face filled with pain and regret. The spirit of Extraordinary Gwen tried to embrace Extraordinary Spider-Man, comforting him and telling him not to be sad or upset, but it couldn't reach him. Further away, there was a phantom of a medieval swordsman in green armor, a long sword at his waist. Was this the ruler of the nightmare dimension, Nightmare? Russell leisurely observed the medieval swordsman's phantom for a few moments, but did nothing more. He had already seen what happened next in Extraordinary Gwen's memories, so he had no interest in seeing it again. With a flow of divine power, Russell extracted a portion of living cells from Extraordinary Gwen's body and solidified them. This action would have almost no impact on the established history. However, space-time still experienced a slight fluctuation. Russell's shimmering white energy flowed, quickly smoothing out the space-time fluctuations. Previously, Russell had allowed the universe to adjust these minor fluctuations on its own. But now that his abilities had increased, it was better to repair them. Retrieving Extraordinary Gwen's living cells, Russell ended this time reversal. Then, he began to slack off. A few girls were chattering away. It was too noisy, so he decided to wait until lunchtime to go back. In a coffee shop, Russell ordered a milk and some snacks, and sat quietly reading. Good morning, New Yorkers. Another beautiful day. Russell put down his book, his gaze following the sound to the television in the shop. A morning program was playing, with 2 hosts talking animatedly. Recently, Spider-Man has been appearing less and less in the public eye. The last time he appeared was 3 days ago. This is unprecedented since Spider-Man's inception. This makes people curious. What happened to Spider-Man? Some speculate that he was injured while fighting crime. Others speculate that he finally realized his vigilante actions were wrong and decided to quit. The Amazing Spider-Man has disappeared? After swallowing the last piece of fish fillet and finishing his milk, Russell got up, paid, and left. The plan had changed. He needed to get Wanda and Gaia to investigate as soon as possible. Turning into a blind spot of the surveillance cameras, Russell stepped out and teleported directly back to the courtyard of his Long Island villa, then pushed open the door and entered. Wanda, Gaia, we have work to do. Russell's voice interrupted the girls' discussion in the room. They all looked at Russell, waiting for his explanation. The Amazing Spider-Man has disappeared. He hasn't shown up for 3 days. Wanda, Gaia, go and investigate the reason. But, Russell, couldn't you just use your mental powers to scan him and find the Amazing Spider-Man? Gwen asked doubtfully. Russell gestured to Wanda and Gaia, letting them explain themselves. Gwen, this is our exam, we don't need Russell's help, Wanda and Gaia explained softly. An exam? Gwen was puzzled, but before she could ask, Extraordinary Gwen asked another question. Peter is missing? Russell, do you know what happened? Russell slumped onto the sofa lazily and said, No, I just saw it on the New York Morning News. As soon as I saw the news, I came back to tell you. Wanda, Gaia, are you going to investigate this? Why don't we go to Peter's house first? I'll take you there. I know where Peter's house is. Seeing Russell lying down, ready to wash his hands of the matter, Extraordinary Gwen looked at Wanda and Gaia and suggested. Okay, thank you, Extraordinary Gwen. Wanda and Gaia nodded and prepared to leave with Extraordinary Gwen. I'll go with you. Gwen pulled off her coat, revealing the Spider-Man suit underneath. Spider-Men trigger spider sense when they get close. I can help you find the Extraordinary Spider-Man. Thank you, Gwen. Extraordinary Gwen said gratefully. Whoosh, a beam of shimmering white divine power approached Extraordinary Gwen, forming a spider-like suit of gold and silver on her body. This suit offered no additional enhancements, simply granting Extraordinary Gwen the ability to make physical contact. Extraordinary Gwen, you've been strengthened. Go. What's this? Extraordinary Gwen adjusted slightly before understanding the suit's purpose. Thank you, Russell. A moment later, the villa was empty again. Hey, Russell, the previously uninvolved Gwen, looking serious, called out to Russell, asking earnestly, in Gwen's world, Peter Parker is dead. In Extraordinary Gwen's world, Extraordinary Gwen is dead. One of them has to die. Is this fate, or coincidence? Fate. But the multiverse has more than 2 worlds. This fate only covers a few. In many other worlds, Gwen and Peter are alive and well, and some don't even know each other, Russell explained. Oh, the little Gwen nodded thoughtfully, then suddenly asked, Does my Earth have Peter Parker? Russell nodded slowly. Little Gwen's face turned pale instantly. Seeing this, Russell comforted her, Don't worry, little Gwen. Earth 404 may have Peter Parker, but he's not Spider-Man. You're not Spider-Man either. I am. You're safe. Meanwhile, Extraordinary Gwen led the 3 to May Parker's door. She knocked. Aunt May, are you home? We're looking for Peter Parker. A moment later, the door opened. Gwen emerged. No one's in the room. May Parker is probably at work and hasn't come home yet. Extraordinary Gwen, go check out the Extraordinary Spider-Man's room and see if you can find any clues. Wanda, Gaia, let's wait in the living room for a bit, okay? Extraordinary Gwen nodded and walked towards the Extraordinary Spider-Man's room. Wanda and Gaia obediently sat down in the living room. Gwen, what if we don't find any clues in the Extraordinary Spider-Man's room? Then we can only wait for May Parker to come home from get off work and ask her, Gwen said helplessly. She had a feeling that there were probably no clues in the Amazing Spider-Man's room. Chapter 138. They are in action. A short while later, Gwen emerged from Peter Parker's room, looking disappointed. There were no clues in the room, and his laptop hasn't been turned on in ages. Gwen exchanged a glance with Wanda and Gaia, saying helplessly, It seems we can only wait for Aunt May to return and ask her. The moon rose and set. Night fell. May Parker dragged her weary body back to her apartment. Standing outside the door, she cautiously surveyed her surroundings. Since her husband Ben Parker's accidental death, she had lived with her nephew, Peter Parker. But recently, after his girlfriend died, Peter seemed like a different person, often disappearing for days at a time. May Parker opened the door, entered, and quickly closed it. Then she sighed, took off her nurse's uniform, and placed it on a chair. She didn't blame Peter for his recent strange behavior. She also couldn't forget that blonde, blue-eyed, intelligent, and gentle girl. Knock knock. May, are you home? I'm Helen, Gwen's mother. The knocking and calling rang out simultaneously. The person outside the door, from the outside, was indeed the mother of the extraordinary Gwen from this world. In reality, it was Jia Yang in disguise. Soon, the door opened again. Helen, come in quickly. Why are you here alone so late? May Parker opened half the door and pulled Jia Yang into the house. It's no wonder May Parker was so nervous. New York's crime rate has always been high. Jia obediently entered the house and went straight to the point. May, is Peter home? Peter hasn't come back yet. Helen, is there something you need from him? May Parker forced a smile. She had lied for Peter. The reason was that she didn't want Helen to know that Peter was now often staying out all night, even disappearing for days at a time, in a depraved state. Jia also lied through her teeth. Yes, that's right. When I was sorting through Gwen's belongings, I found that she had something she wanted to give to Peter. Can you help me give it to him? As she spoke, Jia took out a handmade doll that she had randomly bought on the street during the day. In the doll's hand, she was holding an amulet. Okay, I'll give it to Peter when he gets back, May Parker readily agreed. This doll was made by Gwen herself for Peter. May, you must remember to give it to Peter, Jia reminded her again, then got up to leave. Helen, be careful on your way, on a rooftop somewhere. How is it going, Jia? Did you give the amulet out? Wanda asked as she saw Jia return to her original form and climb up. All done, Jia gave an okay sign. May Parker said he'll give the doll to Peter Parker as soon as he gets back. Wanda, does that amulet have any special use? Supernatural Gwen asked. The amulet has my chaotic energy aura on it, and anyone who comes into contact with it will be tainted. As long as Peter Parker touches the amulet, I can find him no matter where he goes until my aura is dispelled, Wanda explained. Actually, Kamartaj has another spell that can locate the owner of an object with a strong aura. But Wanda doesn't know this spell, her compatibility with white magic is only average. Let's go back first. We'll act again after we get news of the amazing Spider-Man, Ghost once suggested. She was hungry after being out for so long. Wanda and Gaia nodded in agreement. They were hungry too. Wanda put on her slingshot, drew a circle with her finger, and a portal opened, leading directly to the villa's living room. While 3 exclamations rang out from the other side of the portal, it was the amazing Gwen's 3 brothers. Gwen, Wanda, Gaia, the amazing Gwen, you're back. Come and eat. At the dining table, Russell greeted them, gesturing for them to sit down and eat. Helen's cooking is very good, you should eat more. Of the 3 Helen Stacy's Russell knew, this Helen's cooking was the best. Little Gwen, with her belly full and sprawled on the sofa, couldn't bear to move, could attest to that. Gwen, Wanda, and Gaia sat down to sample the food, somewhat skeptical. Extraordinary Gwen, being a spirit, couldn't eat. So, while the other 3 ate, she reported on the progress. We went to Peter's house. Judging from the details and Aunt May's expression, he might not have been home for several days. After that, we gathered some recent information about Spider-Man. We discovered this anomaly started 23 days ago, the 7th day after my death. Previously, Spider-Man had also been absent for more than a full day twice. Coincidentally, the interval between these occurrences was a week. After that, we gave Aunt May a charm that Wanda made, asking her to give it to Peter. Once Peter touches the charm, Wanda will discover. Gwen recounted their discovery in one breath. Russell nodded with a strange expression. This disappearance every week felt so much like the mission mechanics of the main god Space in the novels. Who discovered the pattern of the amazing Spider-Man's disappearances? Russell asked curiously. Gwen pointed to herself. Me, Russell nodded. He actually hoped it was Gia who discovered it. It seemed this apostle still had a long way to go. Gwen, when do you plan to begin your resurrection ritual? I've already cloned your body, so fast? That's not scientific, Gwen exclaimed. She was quite accomplished in the field of biology and knew the difficulty of cloning. She also knew what a miracle it was to create a body in a single day. It's not scientific, but it's magical. Amazing Gwen, have you forgotten? Russell, the Sorcerer Spider-Man and the Sorcerer Supreme, Russell said calmly. He had deliberately used time magic to accelerate the embryo's growth for this very moment. Could we wait a few more days? I want to check on Peter first, Extraordinary Gwen said apologetically. She had learned from Ghost Gwen and Wanda that the resurrection ritual would take about 10 days and could not be interrupted. Extraordinary Gwen, when Peter returns, he can come to see you. The resurrection ritual can awaken consciousness, is that so? Then let's begin now. Extraordinary Gwen nodded sharply and decisively. So, where did the extraordinary Spider-Man go? On an unknown Earth. The last member of the Ayres family, Khan, escaped here. He had been seriously injured during the Spider Alliance's pursuit and had not recovered for a long time. He was able to escape thanks to two things. First, the Ayres family's special attack on Spider-Man. Second, most Spider-Men did not kill him. How can there be two Spider-Men in this world? Khan sniffed the air, utterly puzzled. Never mind, absorb them to heal my injuries before those insects arrive. Chapter 139. Is Spider-Man the Wizard here? Earth 9500, an abandoned building in Queens, New York. Khan, wielding a steel fork, constantly adjusted his position to ensure he could see both Spider-Men simultaneously, preventing him from being surrounded and losing sight of them. He had been careless. Neither of these Spider-Men was simple. One possessed immense strength and exceptional physical abilities, easily matching Khan's own. The other was agile, with lightning-fast reflexes, and a spider sense far more acute than any Spider-Man he had encountered before. Severely injured, he couldn't defeat both Spider-Men quickly. And time wasn't on his side. Just as Khan was pondering, the two Spider-Men exchanged glances and launched a simultaneous attack. In their eyes, time wasn't on their side either. This suddenly appearing monster was extremely powerful. Neither of them alone could match him. They needed to team up to have a chance of victory. And one of the Spider-Men, the Amazing One, would only stay in this world for about 7 days before leaving. At that time, the remaining Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man, would be in danger. Khan wielded his fork, first forcing back the faster Amazing Spider-Man, then turning to block the original Spider-Man. Although the Amazing Spider-Man was forced back, he flicked his wrist in midair. A web shot out, aimed directly at Khan's wrist joint. Khan shifted his body, trying to dodge, but found that the original Spider-Man had already grabbed his fork and was wrestling with him. In a brief pause, Khan's wrist was entangled in the Amazing Spider-Man's web. The next second, the Amazing Spider-Man landed on his feet and pulled back forcefully with both hands. The original Spider-Man also exerted a sudden burst of strength. Working together, the two pulled Khan off balance, causing him to lose his grip on the fork. "Well done, Peter Parker," the Amazing Spider-Man cheered. "You too, Peter Parker," the original Spider-Man replied. After a period of hard fighting, their teamwork had become increasingly seamless. Just as the two Spider-Men were celebrating, Khan's heart sank. He saw red and blue portal open in the distance. 4 more Spider-Men emerged. "Khan, surrender. The Ayres have been wiped out, there's no point in you running anymore." Khan remained silent, only slightly lowering his stance, ready to break free at any moment. Spider Sense activated, and the original Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man, along with the Spider-4 team, noticed each other. "Who are you?" the original Spider-Man asked. "British Spider-Man, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Man Penny, Spider-Ham." After introducing themselves, the British Spider-Man spoke, requesting the cooperation of the two Spider-Men in front. "Two Spider-Men, please cooperate with us and capture Khan. Afterwards, I'll explain everything to you, okay?" This time, facing the combined attack of 6 Spider-Men, the severely injured Khan was unable to escape. After the battle, the original Spider-Man immediately fired off 3 questions. "Who is he? Why did he attack me and the Amazing Spider-Man? And why are you chasing him?" The British Spider-Man explained each question. "He is Khan, from the Ayres family. The Ayres family feeds on Spider-Man, hunting him across the multiverse. Not long ago, led by Spider-Man the Wizard, the Spider League successfully wiped out the main force of the Ayres family. Khan is the last member of the Ayres family." The original Spider-Man nodded thoughtfully. He then asked some questions about the multiverse and the Spider League, which the British Spider-Man answered one by one. "I have a question," Spider-Man Noir suddenly spoke, looking at the Amazing Spider-Man. "How did you get to this universe?" The Amazing Spider-Man's expression darkened, the joy of defeating a powerful enemy fading. "I was transported here by a demon, through the web of life and fate." "A demon? You made a deal with a demon?" The Amazing Spider-Man nodded. "Why? Was it to resurrect someone?" Spider-Man Noir asked. The Amazing Spider-Man remained silent, nodding again. What was the agreement you made with a demon? Is there any way to break it? If you can't break free, you'll probably have to hide in the Spider-Man League headquarters to get rid of him, Spider-Man Noir continued. The agreement is that I'll travel through the multiverse for him to find a couple. In return, he'll resurrect Gwen for me. So, you came to this universe to work for the devil? No. The Amazing Spider-Man shook his head, his expression pained and conflicted. I won't do that. I can't sacrifice others for my own happiness. Spider-Man English shook his head inside. The Amazing Spider-Man, you're doing the right thing. Some Spider-Men in the Spider-Man League have also been deceived by the devil and made deals. But ultimately, none of them successfully resurrected their loved ones. Not a single one. The Amazing Spider-Man, we'll send you back to your universe first. Say goodbye to your loved ones, and then leave for the Spider-Man League. We'll arrange for you to go to a universe the devil can't reach. This is the only way to get rid of him. The Amazing Spider-Man pondered for a moment, then slowly nodded. In his original universe, Aunt May was his only remaining family. Moving was a good solution. Let's go, British Spider-Man called out, activated his wristwatch, and opened a portal. Earth 120,703, Queens, New York. The red and blue portal opened, and 5 Spider-Men emerged. As for Khan, he had already been teleported back to the Spider-Man League headquarters. As soon as he stepped out of the portal, British Spider-Man sensed something was wrong. His wristwatch alerted him to a familiar Spider-Man. What's Ghost Spider-Man doing here? And is Wizard Spider-Man here too? Suppressing his doubts, British Spider-Man decided to deal with the Amazing Spider-Man first, and then look for Ghost Spider-Man and Wizard Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man, go back and pack your things, then let us know to come pick you up, okay? The Amazing Spider-Man nodded in agreement. He shot out a web from his wrist and swung away into the distance. For the first time in a long time, he performed various fancy aerial maneuvers. Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Man Peony, Spider-Ham, let's split up and go find Ghost Spider-Man. British Spider-Man had a subtle premonition. If Ghost Spider-Man was here, Wizard Spider-Man was definitely here too. And Wizard Spider-Man's target was likely the demon that had bewitched the Amazing Spider-Man. If that was the case, the Amazing Spider-Man might not need to move. Okay, the 3 Spider-Men nodded in agreement, each shooting out webs and swinging away into the distance. Back home, Peter was surprised to find that Aunt May hadn't gone to work, but was sitting in the living room. The next second, Peter realized that Aunt May was waiting for him. Lowering his head in shame, Peter apologized softly. I'm sorry, Aunt May. Aunt May didn't say anything blaming, only sighed. Peter, Helen came over last night. She brought a gift that Gwen made for you. I put it in your room, go and see for yourself. Chapter 140 Who is the Wizard Spider-Man, and how strong is he? Inside the Long Island villa, Wanda and Guy were meditating. Ghost Gwen was studying sheet music. She and Matt had formed a superhero band on Earth 404, and the songs were borrowed from other Earths. Little Gwen was doing her homework. Unlike most Americans who receive a relaxed education, Little Gwen received an elite education. Although classes were suspended due to the Battle of New York, her homework hadn't decreased. At this moment, Little Gwen seemed to have encountered a problem and couldn't solve it for a long time. She tilted her head, looked around at everyone in the room, and found that only Russell was doing nothing. Russell, can you teach me this problem? Russell glanced at her, looked away, and refused. Little Gwen, you can ask me math and science, those are common to all countries. But you ask me about language arts, I haven't received an American education, I'll teach you. Little Gwen, hearing the commotion, Ghost Gwen put away her sheet music and offered. Thank you, Ghost Gwen. As soon as Little Gwen finished speaking, Wanda opened her eyes and said, the amulet I left with May Parker has been touched by someone else, probably Peter Parker from this world. Shall we go check it out? Okay, Ghost Gwen responded to Wanda first, then apologized to Little Gwen. Little Gwen, I have to go now. I'll teach you again after I'm done. Okay, Little Gwen pouted, reluctantly. She thought this trip was a field trip, but it turned out to be a different place to do homework. After Ghost Gwen, Wanda, and Gaia left, Little Gwen didn't go back to do her homework. Instead, she glared angrily at Russell. Russell, didn't you say you were taking me out to play? Russell put down his copy of The Lion Goes Wandering, laughing and crying at the same time. Then what do you want to do, Little Gwen? I want to go out with Gwen and the others, to see what they're doing. Then why didn't you go out with them just now? Russell asked. They're not that strong. I'm afraid being with them will affect them. Russell, you're strong. I don't need to be afraid with you, little Gwen said earnestly. Russell, when did little Gwen become so good at talking? Then let's go. I'll take you to secretly follow them. Ghost Spider-Man spotted. Coordinates shared in real time. Penny Spider-Man reported in the Spider-Man team's communication channel. Based on the direction of travel, Ghost Spider-Man's target is likely the Amazing Spider-Man. Okay, let's head over now. Inside the bedroom, Peter looked at the handmade dolls and amulets with a puzzled expression. He didn't remember Gwen making these kinds of dolls. Flipping through them, Peter suddenly noticed the price tags were still on. Could it be that Gwen wanted to buy a doll and claim it was her own? That would make sense. Just as Peter was conjuring up these thoughts, there was a knock on his window. It was a figure in a white Spider-Man suit. Spider-Man again? Peter wondered, opening the window. 3 figures rushed in, instantly making the already cramped bedroom even smaller. After stopping, Ghost Gwen introduced herself, followed closely by Wanda. Hello, the Amazing Spider-Man. I am Ghost Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy from Earth 65, Scarlet Witch. Wanda. Gaia hesitated, wondering which name would be best for her. Do you need something? Peter asked doubtfully. He felt that things had suddenly become unusual ever since he met Khan of the Air family on Earth 9500. Wanda cut to the chase. I want to ask you if you have a way to contact the Dimensional Lords you made a deal with. Hearing Wanda's purpose, Peter's expression changed drastically. Could these be the other Spider-Men that British Spider-Man mentioned, the ones who made deals with the devil? No. I won't tell you how to contact the devil. The devil is an untrustworthy creature. You'll never get what you want from making a deal with them. The Amazing Spider-Man, calm down. Looking at the Amazing Spider-Man who had suddenly entered a state of stress, Ghost Gwen couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. Looking at the poor kid, he must have been badly tricked by the devil. Knock knock. Just then, there was another knock on the window. Hi, Ghost Spider-Man, long time no see. It was Spider-Man Penny. Long time no see, Spider-Man Penny. Gwen Ghost greeted us with a smile and opened the window for Spider-Man Penny. The window was open, but Spider-Man Penny didn't come in. Instead, she suggested, the room is too small. How about we talk on the rooftop? Spider-Man Ingenium, Spider-Man Noir, and Spider-Ham will be coming later. With that, she climbed up to the roof. Gwen Ghost looked at the Amazing Spider-Man, and seeing him nod, she also climbed out the window and went to the rooftop. Gwen Ghost, I just heard something about a devil. Did you come to Earth 120,703 to find the devil who made a contract with the Amazing Spider-Man? As soon as they reached the rooftop, Spider-Man Penny asked curiously. Gwen Ghost didn't answer directly but looked at Wanda and Gaia. She came to Earth 120,703 mainly to help the Amazing Gwen be resurrected. Finding the devil was what Russell, Wanda, and Gaia were doing. Yes, meeting the gazes of Spider-Man Penny and the Amazing Spider-Man, Wanda nodded. Has the Wizard Spider-Man arrived? Penny Spider-Man continued. Yes, Ghost Gwen nodded. That's alright, Penny Spider-Man breathed a sigh of relief. Who is the Wizard Spider-Man? The Amazing Spider-Man couldn't help but ask. In the British Spider-Man's words, he led the Spider League to destroy the Ayers family. In Penny Spider-Man's words, as long as he came, even the devil seemed insignificant. The Wizard Spider-Man is called Russell, and he's the strongest Spider-Man I've ever seen, Penny Spider-Man answered seriously. How strong? The Amazing Spider-Man continued to ask. Please watch the VCR. Penny Spider-Man reached out and pointed to her spider droid. The spider droid projected a beam of light onto the wall. The image showed a close-up of a handsome young Asian man wearing a plain white robe. The image zoomed out and switched to planet. The next instant, an endless beam of blinding light and heat struck the planet, piercing and tearing it apart. Moments later, the planet disintegrated and exploded, leaving only countless dust fragments. Which sorcerer Spider-Man did this? The Amazing Spider-Man's pupils contracted sharply, in disbelief. Is this something a human could do? Could it be fake? The Amazing Spider-Man, you're really smart. This footage is indeed fake, Penny Spider-Man said with a grin. But this scene is something I truly witnessed. It really happened. Chapter 141 Clues to the Nightmare. The Amazing Spider-Man wasn't the only one shocked. Wanda and Gaia, while knowing Russell could combine portals and solar energy to create a new spell, were also surprised. They didn't realize this new spell could so easily shatter planets. Inside the mirror dimension, little Gwen stared at the projected image, mouth agape, before finally recovering. "Russell, was that really you?" Russell smiled shyly. "When I was young and naive, I liked to set off fireworks when I was in a bad mood." Outside the mirror dimension, Wanda, regaining her senses, looked at the Amazing Spider-Man and asked, "The Amazing Spider-Man, from what you just said, you should have a way to contact Nightmare, right? Can you tell us how?" "That devil's name is Nightmare?" "The image does match quite well," the Amazing Spider-Man muttered to himself, then pulled open his clothes on his wrist. A green rune could be seen on the back of his hand. A green rune that Russell, Wanda, and Ghost Gwen all found familiar. Activating this rune will allow you to contact Nightmare. "I can help you contact him, but I have one condition." "What condition?" "Gwen's soul. He threatened me with Gwen's soul, which is why I made the contract with him. If you intend to harm him, I hope you can help me retrieve Gwen's soul." The extraordinary Gwen's soul is no longer with Nightmare. A few days ago, the extraordinary Gwen's soul appeared in little Gwen's body on Earth 404. Later, now, the extraordinary Gwen's soul is merging with the body. It will be perfectly integrated in about 9 days. Ghost Gwen explained the whole story of how they had come to find the Amazing Spider-Man. "Gwen is being resurrected? That's wonderful. Oh, I don't know how to thank you enough." Hearing that the extraordinary Gwen was being resurrected, the Amazing Spider-Man danced with joy. "It's the extraordinary Gwen," Ghost Gwen emphasized. "There are now 3 Gwens in this world. Little Gwen and I are still alive and well." "Okay, extraordinary Gwen, could you take me to see the extraordinary Gwen? Won't it interfere with her resurrection ceremony?" "Oh, I haven't had a proper rest these past few days. No, I need to take a shower and get ready first." Watching the Amazing Spider-Man's incessant chatter, Wanda and Gaia's foreheads were covered in black lines. How come they hadn't noticed before that this Amazing Spider-Man was such a chatterbox? Ghost Gwen and Penny Spider-Man exchanged a knowing smile. That was very Spider-Man. "The Amazing Spider-Man, whether you want to see the extraordinary Gwen first, or take a shower before seeing her, you'd better get started now." Reluctantly, Wanda could only urge him on. "Okay, wait for me a moment, I'll be ready soon." Inside the mirror dimension. "Let's go, little Gwen. Let's go back to the villa and awaken the extraordinary Gwen." Golden magical sparks flashed, instantly engulfing Russell and Gwen, bringing them back to the villa. Back at the villa, Russell headed towards the room where the extraordinary Gwen's nutrient capsule was located. He knocked on the door. "Helen, Peter will be here soon. I'll wake extraordinary Gwen first." A moment later, Helen opened the door from the inside. "Okay, Russell. But extraordinary Gwen is awake now, she doesn't need to be woken up." Entering the room, Russell looked at a status graph on the instrument, which showed her as awake. "Helen, did you wake extraordinary Gwen? Or did she choose to stay awake?" Russell asked. "The resurrection ritual would take about 10 days, during which she couldn't move. Staying awake the whole time would be worse than being locked in a dark room. Extraordinary Gwen wanted to stay awake. I was worried she'd be bored, so I'm keeping her company and chatting with her." "All right then." Since it was extraordinary Gwen who wanted to stay conscious, Russell had nothing to say. After thinking for a moment, Russell channeled his divine power, condensing it into a small megaphone, which he connected to extraordinary Gwen's body. "Extraordinary Gwen, this little megaphone can help you speak." "Thank you, Russell." A clear, mechanical voice rang out. "You're welcome, it's nothing." Leaving the room, Russell returned to the living room to read a novel. He had already finished A Lion Goes Wandering, and Russell continued with the sequel, The Lion King with a Red Ribbon. "Russell, are you reading children's books?" Little Gwen, who had been following Russell, asked. Although she couldn't understand the Chinese text, she could understand the illustrations. "Yes, and not entirely." "What, little Gwen, do you want to read it too?" Russell asked. "No," little Gwen shook her head repeatedly, "these illustrations look too childish." After saying that, little Gwen couldn't help but laugh. She often saw Russell reading books, but she didn't expect him to be reading these children's books. Russell's face darkened. "Have you finished your homework, little Gwen?" Little Gwen's smile froze. A moment later, the portal opened. Wanda and Guy led the way, bringing out 6 Spider-Men. "Long time no see, Wizard Spider-Man, X4. Long time no see, British Spider-Man, Shadow Spider-Man, Peony Spider-Man, Spider-Ham. Russell put down his novel and responded to the 4 Spider-Men. And, it's nice to see you, the Amazing Spider-Man. Russell looked at the Amazing Spider-Man who was looking at him, and smiled. He wasn't just looking at the Amazing Spider-Man, but also at the nightmare behind the Amazing Spider-Man, and the billions of units of energy that the nightmare represented. The Amazing Gwen is upstairs, you can just follow little Gwen up, okay, thank you, Wizard Spider-Man. Upon hearing that the Amazing Gwen was upstairs, the Amazing Spider-Man couldn't contain himself. He quickly thanked her and followed her upstairs. Once upstairs, the British Spider-Man asked, Sorcerer Spider-Man, the last member of the Heirs family, Kong has been captured. Do you have any plans for him? Russell shook his head. No, you can handle it yourself, the British Spider-Man continued. Sorcerer Spider-Man, are you targeting the devil who made the deal with the Amazing Spider-Man this time? If you can completely eliminate him, then we don't need to take the Amazing Spider-Man away. Otherwise, we'll take him to another universe for refuge. I will completely resolve this matter. There's no need to take the Amazing Spider-Man away. Russell had a strange feeling. The British Spider-Man seemed to be deliberately verifying something with him. See, I guessed right. British Spider-Man and Spider-Man Noir stood up and clapped in celebration. Peony Spider-Man and Spider-Ham, however, hung their heads in dejection. Good grief, these guys bet on me. Russell shook his head and chuckled. Do you have any stakes? If so, remember to share with me, otherwise, stakes. The 2 pairs of Spider-Men looked at each other blankly. Suddenly, the tables turned. No stakes, Peony Spider-Man and Spider-Ham clapped and cheered. British Spider-Man and Spider-Man Noir hung their heads in dejection, transforming into defeated men. How could we forget to add a prize? Wanda and Guy looked at each other in bewilderment. Is this Spider-Man? It's too crazy. Chapter 142 Entering the Nightmare Dimension. Sunlight streamed past a window. Everyone, lunchtime. In the living room, Helen placed plate after plate of steak and fish on the table until it was full. She already knew that the young men and women here, except for little Gwen, were all big eaters. After inviting everyone to sit down, Helen noticed Peter, superhuman, hadn't come down yet, so she called out again, Peter, come down for lunch too. Helen, I'm not hungry, I'll come down later. Peter's voice came from upstairs, showing no intention of leaving the room where superhuman Gwen's nutrient capsule was located. This kid, Helen shook her head and chuckled, but didn't try to persuade him further, getting up to collect a set of cutlery. She figured Peter wouldn't be coming out of the room anytime soon. But the young man was young and in great shape, missing a meal wouldn't matter. To Helen's surprise, Peter emerged from the room a short while later. When he first came out, Peter's face still showed reluctance. But once he reached the bottom of the stairs, his face lit up with excitement. Good afternoon, Helen. Good afternoon, Spider-Man. Good afternoon, Wanda, Gaia, and Gwen. Before even sitting down, Peter started chattering away. Oh, thank you so much this time. Spider-Man the Wizard, you truly are the most powerful and amazing Spider-Man. How come you ate so fast? Leave some for me, and some for Gwen too? Amidst the commotion, the pleasant lunch ended, and business began. After working together to help Helen clear the table, Wanda couldn't help but ask about the important matter. Peter, could you let us take another look at that rune that connects to Nightmare? Of course, Peter readily agreed, rolling up his sleeve to reveal a green rune on the back of his hand. Wanda and the others leaned closer to examine it closely. A sense of déjà vu washed over them again. I think I've seen this rune before, but I can't remember where or when, Wanda said, frowning as she voiced her doubts. I have the same feeling of familiarity, its texture seems somewhat similar to Camartage magic, Ghost Gwen chimed in. It looks familiar too, the Spider Squad added. Seeing this rune reminds me of the Web of Life and Fate, so, this rune is likely a combination of Camartage magic and the Web of Life and Fate, Gwen declared, suddenly realizing. Not necessarily, Wanda countered. Camartage contains many spells, many even originating from various magical entities and dimensional demons. Seeing a similar rune in Camartage doesn't mean it belongs to Camartage, she paused, then added, but regardless, once we find the owner of this rune, the truth will be revealed. Should I activate this rune now, Wanda? Peter asked. What will happen if I activate this rune? Wanda asked. There are 2 possibilities. If I activate it in another world, it will teleport me back to this world, If I activate it in this world, it will teleport me to the realm of demons, so, what you call the nightmare dimension. Wanda's expression shifted. The most direct method was for Peter to activate the rune and enter the nightmare dimension. Then, she could track it down using the aura of chaos magic. But the problem was, she didn't possess the ability to teleport across dimensions and universes. After a moment's thought, Wanda turned her gaze to Russell, who had been holding up little Gwen and watching the show. "Russell, what do you think?" Russell put little Gwen down. Just now, a group of people had crowded around to look at the soul on the back of Peter's hand, and little Gwen was no exception, but she was too small to squeeze in, so Russell held her up. Ghost Gwen is right. This rune is a special spell from Kamartaj, combined with a web of life and fate. It also contains the coordinates of the nightmare dimension. Later, I'll open a portal for you to enter the nightmare dimension. Wanda and Gwen might not be able to confirm the origin of this rune, but Russell recognized it immediately. It was two runes stitched together. It looked like one rune, but it was actually two. "Is the test over?" "Russell, you'll take action now?" Wanda asked. "No, it's not over yet." Russell shook his head. "It was my oversight before. I didn't give you a way to enter and exit the hell dimension. Later, I'll find a way to create an item that allows free entry and exit. As for now, the test continues, and we can also test out any other oversights." After saying that, Russell looked at the Spider-Man and asked, "Do you want to come along?" The four members of the Spider-Man team looked at each other, eager to try, and said, "Of course, if it won't cause any trouble. We'd also like to see the demon realm." Peter hesitated for a moment before saying, "Of course, I've been to the nightmare dimension a few times. I can show you the way." "Peter, you don't want to go?" Russell noticed Peter's hesitation and asked. "Yes, I want to spend more time with the amazing Gwen. But if you're going, I'll come with you." "Peter, if you want to stay with the amazing Gwen a little longer, then stay," Russell advised. "This search for nightmare is a test for Wanda and Gaia. You don't need to give them too much help." In fact, Wanda and Gaia had already gathered a lot of information during this amazing Spider-Man universe journey. Before even arriving in this universe, they had already identified one of Nightmare's contacts, the amazing Spider-Man. And they naturally possessed the key tool to gain the amazing Spider-Man's trust, the amazing Gwen. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be this smooth. No, after the initial hesitation, Peter became more resolute. "This matter arose because of Gwen and me. I can't run away." "All right then," Russell shrugged. He had no objection to the group entering the nightmare dimension. In any case, he would be the one to make the final move. After confirming the personnel entering the nightmare dimension, Russell's divine power surged from his feet. As the shimmering white divine power traced patterns on the ground, circular runes emerged, then seemed to come alive, swirling and spreading outwards from the center. Finally, they formed a mysterious and complex magic circle. The next moment, the circle activated, and after a burst of gentle white light, the 10 people vanished from the living room. The color of the magic circle gradually faded until it was invisible to the naked eye. Within the super vortex, the gentle white light enveloped everyone, propelling them rapidly into the distance. "Wow, so beautiful," little Gwen exclaimed, marveling at the magnificent and wondrous scene within the super vortex. After an unknown amount of time, a grayish-green bubble appeared before them. The gentle white light enveloped them, silently passing through the bubble's membrane and entering its interior. The nightmare dimension had arrived. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143: The Nightmare's Identity. Beneath the dark green sky stretched an endless, desolate wasteland. Countless abandoned houses and buildings lay crumbling and broken, weathered and dilapidated. In open spaces, countless corpses were scattered haphazardly, bones, rotting flesh, and blood intertwined, creating a gruesome scene. "Russell, why are you covering my eyes?" little Gwen struggled, trying to pry Russell's right hand off her eyes. "Little Gwen, this scene is inappropriate for children. I'm afraid if you see it, you'll have nightmares. George and Helen will blame me." Russell held little Gwen down with his left hand, showing no intention of letting go. Although he had ways to censor little Gwen's image, if the censoring wasn't too severe, she could fill in the blanks herself. If it was too severe, it was better not to see it at all. When I entered the nightmare dimension before, I always went directly into the nightmare castle. I've never been outside," the Amazing Spider-Man explained. If he had known what the outside of the nightmare dimension looked like, he wouldn't have let little Gwen in. After a while, the group composed themselves and began to observe carefully. "That direction should be Nightmare's castle," the Amazing Spider-Man said, pointing to a direction with scattered lights after a moment's observation. In that direction, a city could be vaguely seen, standing amidst the mist. "Let's go," Wanda nodded, drawing a circle with her finger. A portal appeared, leading directly to the city in the direction the Amazing Spider-Man had pointed. Then, she took the lead, stepping into the portal. The others followed. "No. My father was a hero. He sacrificed himself to protect this city." Just then, Penny Parker, who had been quietly lagging behind with her head down, suddenly lost her temper and roared. "Penny Spider-Man, wake up!" Spider-Ham reacted quickly, grabbing Penny Spider-Man and shaking her. "Penny Spider-Man, calm down. This space seems to trigger painful memories, don't let it affect you," Spider-Man Noir quickly reminded Penny Spider-Man as well. "Spider-Man, have you noticed anything?" the British Spider-Man asked Russell. Russell looked at the 4 members of the Spider-Man team, puzzled, and then explained, "There's a faint, almost imperceptible gray-green energy surrounding you, constantly seeking an opportunity to corrupt your minds." The others weren't affected because Russell's luminous white energy formed a defensive barrier around them. As for the Amazing Spider-Man, being a nightmare in some ways, he was naturally unaffected. Russell activated his energy absorption talent, instantly clearing away the surrounding gray-green energy. Attribute points plus 12. As a portion of the gray-green energy disappeared, gray-green energy from afar slowly spread and filled the gap. It wouldn't be long before the void was filled. Seeing this, Russell simply cast a divine power barrier on the 4 members of the Spider-Man team as well. "I've put an energy shield around you to protect you from the gray-green energy. Thank you, Spider-Man the Wizard." Penny, having recovered from her painful memories, thanked Russell and then lowered her head in silence. Sigh. Russell sighed inwardly. Spider-Men are all unfortunate. 10 Spider-Men, 11 with tragic fates. The death of elders, friends, or partners, one or more of these things always seem to be their fate. This damn web of life and destiny. Luckily, I'm the new Spider-Man. Let's go. Let's go see that city." Composing himself, Russell signaled for everyone to set off, following Wanda. Passing through the portal, they arrived at the edge of the city. What they saw was different from the desert. Although the city was also desolate and dilapidated, the houses and buildings were intact. There were no more severed limbs on the streets. Russell then released his right hand, which had been covering Gwen's eyes. Finally able to see again, Gwen peeked around, looking around curiously. Suddenly, Gwen exclaimed, "This looks like New York." "New York?" Hearing Gwen's comment, the others observed the area again, but came to different conclusions. "It does look a bit like it," Ghost Gwen, Wanda, and Gaia agreed with Gwen's point of view. "It doesn't really look like it," Spider-Ham and the Amazing Spider-Ham disagreed. British Spider-Man and Penny Spider-Man remained silent. The former didn't live in New York, and the latter was in a bad mood. "We come from different worlds and different eras, so it's normal that our New York doesn't look like it," Spider-Man Noir reminded them. "That makes sense." The Amazing Spider-Man, who had been leading the way, swung down from his web and landed steadily in front of a building. It was a 3-story Victorian-style townhouse made of brownstone, featuring French Baroque architectural design and a duplex roof. "The last few times I came here, I always had a strange sense of familiarity. It turns out, the buildings here are New York from another world." Wanda and Ghost Gwen followed closely behind, landing in front of the building. "The New York Sanctum Sanctum," Wanda and Ghost Gwen exclaimed in surprise upon seeing the building before them. "Wanda, Ghost Gwen, do you know this place?" the Amazing Spider-Man asked. "Yes. On Earth 404, this is one of the 3 sanctums on Earth. Sanctums are usually the connection points between the multiverse and supernatural phenomena. To protect the real dimension from being corrupted by magic, sorcerers construct magic circles and buildings on them to conceal their presence," Wanda explained to the Amazing Spider-Man. She had seen this information more than once in the Camartage library. Once everyone was present, Wanda led the way into the Sanctum Sanctum. The interior space of the Sanctum Sanctum seemed more spacious than it appeared from the outside, with maze-like corridors. But as a member of the Camartage sorcerers, Wanda, who had been stationed in New York for a long time, was very familiar with the New York sanctum. They first checked the living room, dining room, kitchen, and library on the first floor. They discovered that the library contained many Camartage books. This suggests that it's likely not someone replicating the New York sanctum in the nightmare dimension, but rather that the nightmare dimension has devoured a New York sanctum. Next is the second floor, the living quarters. Each bedroom has a nameplate indicating its occupant. One room, clearly the master bedroom, also has a nameplate, Stephen Strange. The moment Wanda uttered this name, the entire nightmare dimension trembled. Without a doubt, the owner of this name is the master of the nightmare dimension, Nightmare. In the meditation room on the third floor, feeling the nightmare dimension tremble, a man shrouded in a black robe opened his eyes. I didn't expect so many insects to sneak into my sanctum. Chapter 144. You didn't return your magic to Vishanti, did you? As the figure in the black robe rose, the entire space of the sanctum sanctorum in New York began to distort, with the floorboards shifting constantly crackling sound. Soon, the sanctum sanctorum was transformed. The master bedroom in front of them was moved aside, replaced by a spiral staircase. At the end of the staircase was a figure shrouded in a black robe. Below the stairs, Wanda looked up at the shadowy figure at the top and asked, "You're Stephen Strange, the master of the nightmare dimension, Wanda Maximoff, it's you. You don't recognize me, and you're so young. In your universe, Christine must still be alive, right?" Stephen removed his hat, looking at Wanda with excitement. Then, he looked admiringly at the Amazing Spider-Man. "The Amazing Spider-Man, not bad, you're very good. You brought me such good news. This time, consider it a success that you've found a world with Stephen and Christine. Devil, I won't search for Stephen and Christine in other universes for you," the Amazing Spider-Man said decisively. "I'm here to settle things with you." "Oh," Stephen chuckled. "Just you guys? Several Spider-Men, and a newly awakened Scarlet Witch. What gives you the courage to think you can defeat me?" As Stephen's voice fell, one by one, armored warriors wielding long swords emerged from the bedroom in the second-floor lounge area, surrounding the group. Stephen looked down at them, saying condescendingly, "I'll give you two choices, bugs. Continue to work for me, searching for the world that exists in Christine, or, die here, work for me, or be killed by me. Which do you choose?" Stephen's gaze wasn't just on the Amazing Spider-Man, but also on the other Spider-Men. As for Gaia, Russell, and little Gwen, he ignored them. "I said, I won't work for you, to persecute that innocent couple," the Amazing Spider-Man retorted forcefully. Now that extraordinary Gwen's soul was no longer in Nightmare's hands, and with the help of the sorcerer Spider-Man, he had nothing to fear from Nightmare. "Innocent lovers, ha 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 ha," Stephen suddenly burst into laughter. "You think Stephen and Christine from other worlds could have grown old together without me? This is fate, the fate of Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange. Either be separated from Christine, or witness Christine's death. Just like the fate of you Spider-Men. I just want to break this fate, I'm not wrong." With Stephen's roar, the samurai stepped forward, wielding their weapons and slashing at the group. Just as the Spider-Men were about to dodge, a snap of fingers suddenly rang out. Looking in the direction of the sound, Russell slowly released his fingers and lowered his arm. As Russell's arm lowered, a green energy was stripped from the samurai and flew towards Russell. Without the support of the green energy, the samurai, along with their armor and weapons, turned to ashes. "Who are you?" Stephen looked at Russell, a hint of apprehension flashing in his eyes. "Sorcerer Spider-Man and Sorcerer Supreme, Russell," Russell said calmly. "I've never heard of you before. I've seen Sorcerer Supreme Wong, Sorcerer Supreme Mordo, Sorcerer Supreme Caecilius. But this is the first time I've heard of Sorcerer Supreme Russell. You're very unusual." Stephen was wary, silently distorting space to widen the distance between them. An unknown figure, to some extent, signifies mystery. And mystery always makes one vulnerable. Especially since he couldn't discern Russell's true nature at first glance, even unconsciously ignoring him. Even after Russell made his move, he still couldn't see clearly. "Whether you've heard of me or not is unimportant, what matters is your next choice." Thump thump thump. As Russell's voice fell, the spiral staircase twisted and cracked layer by layer. The floor beneath Russell and his companions' feet also rose continuously. Finally, the second floor became the third floor. Russell looked down at Stephen with disdain. Just moments before, while Russell was slacking off, he had made a phone call to the bald Ancient One. Upon learning that the Nightmare Dimension Lord was Stephen Strange, the Ancient One lost all interest in watching the drama unfold. There was one thing in common across all the multiverses: Doctor Strange was the Ancient One's disciple. And the Ancient One, due to some special reason, shared information extensively across universes. In a sense, she could be considered one person. While the Ancient One was also somewhat of a comedian, she couldn't bring herself to watch her disciples' antics. After instructing Russell to clean house, the Ancient One hung up. As for why she didn't act herself, it certainly wasn't out of fear of failure or embarrassment in front of her other disciples. I'll give you two choices. Sign a contract, pay compensation, offer tribute, and then I'll kill you. Or, sign a contract, pay compensation, offer tribute, and then I'll kill you. Stephen laughed out loud in anger. You want my nightmare dimension? Come and take it if you want. A dense green fog had enveloped the sanctuary without anyone noticing. Stephen formed hand seals, and the green fog rapidly converged on Russell, completely surrounding him. Spider-Man Mage. The extraordinary Spider-Man's warning hadn't even finished when Russell had already absorbed all the green fog around him. Don't absorb this green fog, it will cause terrifying hallucinations. Attribute points plus 4,396. Terrifying hallucinations? This isn't a hallucination, and it's not terrifying at all. Russell looked at the increased attribute points. Although it was just a drop in the bucket, he couldn't help but smile. Sure enough, he still needed to find a dimensional lord. A casual attack from one could give him thousands of attribute points. Stephen, it seems you've chosen the first option. Facing the wary Stephen, Russell relaxed slightly. Seeing that the fog attack was ineffective against Russell, Stephen didn't waste any words. He formed hand seals again, and countless black crows with scarlet eyes flew out from the fog, swooping down on Russell. Russell clenched his fist in midair, creating a massive vortex that sucked the crows in and made them disappear. Stephen, is that all you've got? Even your magic tricks aren't impressive. If you can't come up with something new, I won't be so polite. Russell's taunt was met with a beam of green energy. Energy attacks, of course, were ineffective against Russell. Stephen, where are your spells? Did you return them all to Vishanti? Russell asked, puzzled. He'd hoped to steal some spells from Stephen, but it seemed Stephen hadn't used any of his advanced magic. Stephen's face twitched at Russell's words, as if he'd been hit where it hurt. No way? You really returned your spells to Vishanti? Chapter 145 Nightmare Doctor Strange, Utter Defeat. Stephen Strange's already greenish face turned even more ashen. Russell had guessed correctly. His abandonment of his duties as Sorcerer Supreme and his use of dark magic to become the Lord of the Nightmare Dimension had angered the Vishanti. Therefore, he was forbidden from using white magic by the Vishanti. But, even without white magic, I am still the Sorcerer Supreme, and I can defeat you, Nightmare Strange coldly retorted to Russell's taunt. He swung his hands violently, and several gray-green pythons suddenly emerged from his black robes, their blood-red mouths snapping at Russell. Faced with a python's attack, Russell remained calm. He extended his right hand, and a golden seraphim shield unfolded, blocking the pythons. Behind him, an avatar wielding the Vishanti's sacred sword stepped forward. The avatar stepped forward, and with a swift stroke, severed the python in half, then slowly dissipated. You say you are the Sorcerer Supreme and can defeat me, then prove it to me. I'd better be able to steal a few of his skills. I'll prove it to you, Nightmare Strange sneered. A thick green mist suddenly surged out behind him, engulfing him. When the mist dissipated, Nightmare Strange vanished. He ran away. No, he just moved the battlefield. Probably didn't want to damage this place, Russell explained, his shimmering white divine power surging forth, engulfing everyone and leading them to catch up with Nightmare Strange. As Russell and Nightmare Strange departed, the distorted space of the sanctuary returned to calm. Golden magical sparks flickered, and a portal opened. A bald mage in a yellow robe, neither male nor female, emerged. Stephen, sigh. With a long sigh, the yellow-robed mage, holding an ancient book radiating holy light, stepped out. He traversed space, catching up with the vanished Nightmare Strange and Russell. A desolate desert, an endless wasteland. A thick green mist emerged, and Nightmare Strange stood still, waiting for Russell's arrival. The next instant, a flash of white light appeared, and Russell arrived with his tour group. The battle was about to begin when another clone emerged from behind Russell, blindfolding Gwen again. Russell, what are you doing? Gwen protested, still thoroughly enjoying the magical clash. What follows is not suitable for children. On the desert, tattered figures rose. These figures were twisted and contorted, their faces grotesque. But upon closer inspection, it wasn't hard to see that these were all Stephen Strange. Stephen Strange from various universes. Some of the strange figures conjured blades in their hands, others whips. The Stevens who conjured weapons attacked Russell simultaneously. Others formed hand seals, casting various spells for ranged attacks. It seems you've killed quite a few of your multiverse counterparts and enslaved their souls. With just one glance, Russell understood the principle behind Nightmare's strange attack. Compared to creating clones with a form of Ekron, this move doesn't consume brain power. However, it's too insidious. Russell opened his palm, and shimmering white divine power continuously gathered. He suddenly slammed his palm together, and divine power burst out from between his fingers, transforming into a chain of lightning bolts that swept across the enemies in all directions. Wherever the lightning passed, it was like a spear piercing the heart. Piercing through and pulling out the souls of Stephen and the others one by one. Their soulless bodies froze and slowly fell to the ground. The next moment, yellow sand surged, burying the corpses of Stephen and the others. Russell released his hand from covering little Gwen's eyes. "Stephen, if you don't have any other tricks up your sleeve, this game is over," Russell said listlessly. He was somewhat disappointed with this nightmare oddity. He had thought that this nightmare oddity, after being forbidden from using white magic, would be able to develop some useful spells on its own. Unexpectedly, this nightmare oddity had lost the diversity of a mage's skills and lacked the powerful energy attacks of a dimensional lord, only capable of playing some petty tricks. "Don't be too happy yet," Nightmare Strange retorted forcefully. Nightmare Strange flew up, and the bones, rotting flesh, and blood of Doctor Stranges from various universes buried by Russell all converged on him, merging into his body. Arms continuously grew from Nightmare Strange's back, then burst forth, shooting towards Russell. Russell remained silent. He probably should have continued covering Gwen's eyes. Glancing at Gwen and finding she showed no fear or nausea, Russell decided to treat it like a horror movie. Facing the incoming arms, Russell didn't counter them. He was fed up. With a flash, Russell closed the distance to Nightmare Strange, directly attacking his face with a punch. Nightmare Strange contracted violently. "Wait, you're a sorcerer supreme, why do you always engage in close quarters combat?" Bang! One punch, and Nightmare Strange was instantly reduced to smoke and dispersed. No, it was Nightmare Oddity that deliberately dispersed its body. Seeing this, Russell's lips curled into a smile. The last one to use this trick against him was the Blood God's clone, which was directly devoured by him. Nightmare Oddity was no exception. With a thought, a strange suction force arose around Russell. Nightmare Oddity was shocked. Its dispersed body and soul suddenly became uncontrollable, forced to converge towards Russell. Then, its energy and body were completely devoured, leaving only a lonely soul. Russell changed his fist into a claw, grabbing Nightmare Oddity's soul. "You've spun your own cocoon, it's not over yet." Although its soul was captured, Nightmare Oddity was still not giving up. Streaks of crimson lightning suddenly burst forth, attacking Russell. But the crimson lightning struck Russell, causing no ripples, disappearing without a trace. "You're devouring my energy? Then keep devouring, let's see how much you can devour," Nightmare Oddity roared, its mouth and eyes suddenly erupting with terrifying energy, shooting towards Russell. Russell slightly dodged to the side, kicking the Nightmare Strange spirit, interrupting its energy release. He scoffed at the energy emanating from its mouth. "Where did you learn that bad habit? Releasing energy from your mouth, how disgusting," he muttered, as Russell's hand pierced through the Nightmare Strange spirit. The spirit was instantly twisted and spun, sucked into Russell's luminous white space. The Nightmare Strange was utterly defeated. Normally, the Nightmare Dimension was his home turf. He could summon massive amounts of energy for attack, defense, and healing. Against Russell, he wouldn't be defeated so quickly. At least he could force Russell to use his energy absorption talent before being instantly killed. But the Nightmare Strange wasn't a normal dimensional lord. He was originally a mage, and his time as a dimensional lord was brief. After becoming a dimensional lord, he focused on how to resurrect Christine, neglecting his research into the dimension itself. "Stephen isn't so easy to kill." Golden magical sparks flashed, and a bald mage stepped forward. Chapter 146 Russell's Divine Palm. "You are the Ancient One." Russell looked at the androgynous bald sorcerer before him, puzzled. While the bald sorcerer's appearance differed from the other two ancient ones Russell knew, their soul auras were remarkably similar. Yes, Russell. I am the aggregate of the various ancient ones from the multiverse. You can call me, the Primal Ancient One. The Primal Ancient One's lips curled into a half-smile. Russell paused briefly, then asked, Sorcerer, are you experiencing a split personality? One part wants to laugh, while the other doesn't. The Primal Ancient One's expression stiffened slightly, then shook his head helplessly. Alright, you figured it out. I'm still in the process of merging. The various Ancient Ones are still coordinating. Sorcerer, won't this cause problems? Russell asked, feeling that this fusion was somewhat unreliable. We are of one mind, sharing the same goal, the endless pursuit and exploration of magical knowledge. As long as we persist in this direction, there won't be any problems. The Ancient One's tone was firm, her eyes deep and bright. So, there will still be problems, Russell added. There will be occasional problems. The Ancient One's tone became resentful. This disciple, why does he like to argue so much? Let's not talk about that for now. Let's talk about Stephen. He has mastered a dark book and used it to change his life form. Only the Book of Vishanti can completely seal him. Wasn't Steve captured by Russell? Ancient One, Wanda asked doubtfully. She had just clearly seen Nightmare's strange spirit being captured by Russell. Wanda, these dimensional lords like to use multiple identities, layer upon layer of clones. That one just now was just Stephen's clone, the Ancient One explained. No. That was Stephen's true form. Russell retrieved the Nightmare's strange spirit from the luminous white space. Within the space, the Nightmare's strange spirit was rapidly assimilated, its mental defenses rendered useless, and its memories were read by Russell. This Stephen didn't change his own life form, but rather the life form of his clone. His main body maintained its original human appearance. The purpose was to resurrect Christine so he could continue living with her. Russell slowly explained the story of Nightmare's strangeness to everyone. Initially, Nightmare's strangeness, in order to resurrect Christine, searched for her soul and found the Nightmare dimension. Using the power of the Dark Book, Nightmare's strangeness successfully defeated the original Nightmare dimension lord and reclaimed Christine's soul. However, this action incurred the wrath of the Vishanti, who forbade him from using white magic. Afterwards, Nightmare's strangeness utilized the unique characteristics of the Nightmare dimension, traversing the multiverse in his spirit form to find Christine's and other worlds and seize their bodies to resurrect his own Christine. However, even with identical bodies, the soul and body were not perfectly compatible. Every so often, Christine needed to change bodies. And this period was getting shorter and shorter. This was because the magical energy Nightmare's strangeness used to nurture Christine's soul was also eroding her. Forced to act, Nightmare's strangeness had to recruit more helpers to search for more Christines in other worlds, such as the Amazing Spider-Man, and conduct experiments to find solutions, such as projecting the soul of the Amazing Gwen into little Gwen's body. Russell, what happened to the Christines from the other worlds? Where are they? Little Gwen asked. She deeply sympathized with the fate of the other Christines. Russell snapped his fingers, divine power surging forth, enveloping everyone and moving them rapidly. A moment later, they arrived at a frozen lake. Russell pointed to their feet. This is where the Christines from the other worlds are buried. Unlike Steve from the other worlds, whose bodies were abandoned in the wilderness, each Christine's body was strangely and carefully preserved by Nightmare, frozen beneath the lake's surface. How terrifying! Little Gwen turned pale with fright after glancing at the densely packed figures lying beneath the lake's surface. The others also felt a chill run down their spines, their trypophobia almost flaring up. This is only half. The other half is in another place. Huh? Why are they in two places? Little Gwen asked, puzzled. Because snakes have two eyes. Russell stomped his foot, landing on the frozen lake. Divine power seeped down, reaching its depths, and then exploded violently. Boom. The entire ice shattered instantly, and clumps of green blood gushed from the lake bed. Hiss. 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 Within the Nightmare dimension, the green clouds in the sky and the desolate desert beneath their feet suddenly began to move rapidly. Rising and falling, it was as if the sky were collapsing and the earth were bulging. The sky is collapsing, Little Gwen exclaimed in shock at the sight. No, the sky isn't collapsing, the Ancient One explained to Little Gwen. This world is an illusion. We've always been on a giant serpent. The current scene of the sky collapsing and the earth sinking is simply the movement of this serpent. The sorcerer is right. Russell unleashed his divine power, once again carrying the group at breakneck speed. moving them away from this world. Once they were a sufficient distance away, they finally saw the true face of the world they had been in. It was a colossal serpent, as large as an asteroid, coiled up. At this moment, green blood was continuously flowing from one of the serpent's eyes. The Ancient One, looking at the serpent, said solemnly, "Stephen not only borrowed the power of the Dark Book, but he also borrowed the power of the ancient god Set. I originally thought this serpent was his true form. That's why I came. Only by borrowing the Book of Vishanti can we defeat him." Set, also known as the Serpent God, was one of the ancient gods. He was proficient in various abilities such as mind control and spiritual manipulation. Unlike the Ancient One's solemn expression, Russell remained calm and composed. It's rare for an avatar to be stronger than the original. However, it's all the same. Russell clasped his hands together, his body radiating a luminous white light. Behind him, an even larger Dharma image, Russell, composed of luminous white matter, slowly emerged. The Dharma image hovered in the void, blotting out the sky. Russell raised his palm and slowly pressed down. The Dharma image Russell also raised his palm and slowly pressed down on the giant serpent. Because of the great distance, the palm strike didn't seem large. The strange giant serpent clearly underestimated it, hissing and baring its fangs as it lunged at the palm. The palm continued to press down, the resolution constantly magnifying. Only then did the strange giant serpent see the fingerprint seams in the palm. Inside the fingerprint seams were densely packed keratinocytes. Within the keratinocytes were countless details. Before it could observe any further, the strange giant serpent's fangs snapped off, its head was forced down, and it slammed into the ground. Bang! The palm was completely unaffected and continued to press down. Mountains crumbled, the earth cracked. When the Dharma image dissipated, a gigantic palm print remained forever within the nightmare dimension. Chapter 147 We all have a bright future. Even across an immeasurable distance, the hand that just landed barely touched their feet. Looking ahead, at the abyss stretching to the horizon, a bottomless abyss, the Ancient One remained silent. They had promised to be of one mind. The Ancient One didn't lie to the Ancient One. The bald Ancient One from Earth 404, who had notified her of this arrival, hadn't mentioned her disciple's power. "Sorcerer, could you please take a closer look? Is that giant serpent truly dead? Should we use the Book of Vishanti to finish it off?" Faced with Russell's feigned request, the Ancient One rolled her eyes. "Dead? Not even a soul remains, but Russell, how did you break the dark arts spell cast on Stephen and kill him directly?" "I don't know. Maybe. I'm just stronger. Miracles happen with brute force." Russell hesitated. As an ancient god, and one with an unfair advantage at that, Russell didn't need to bother deciphering a mere spell from the Dark Book. A single strike would solve everything. The Ancient One fell silent again. He began to suspect that the Ancient One of Earth 404 wasn't normal. Otherwise, why would her disciple be so mischievous? Seeing that the Ancient One was no longer speaking, Russell began to assign tasks. "Wanda, Gaia, go and find other life groups in this dimension. Invite their leaders to a meeting at the Sanctum Sanctum to discuss the future order of the nightmare dimension. If anyone refuses, tell them to consider whether they can withstand the blow that just came from the sky." Based on the power of that blow, Russell believed no one would dare refuse Wanda and Gaia. Gwen, little Gwen, the amazing Spider-Man, British Spider-Man, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Man Penny, Spider-Ham, I'll send you all back to Earth 120,703 first. Okay, wait a minute, Spider-Man Penny, what's wrong? Russell looked at Spider-Man Penny and asked. "I have something to talk to you about, Spider-Man the Wizard." "I'll leave later," Spider-Man Penny said calmly. "Okay," Russell nodded thoughtfully. Spider-Man Noir gave Spider-Man Penny a deep look, seemingly understanding something, but didn't delve into it. Instead, he brought up another matter. "We can help Wanda and Gaia notify the other tribal leaders in the nightmare dimension to go to the Sanctum Sanctorum for a meeting. After we are done with that, we'll go back with Spider-Man Penny." "Okay," Russell smiled meaningfully. Spider-Man Penny also looked up and gave Spider-Man Noir a grateful look. "Then I'll go help Wanda and Gaia too." Seeing that the Spider-Man team had stayed, Gwen also offered to stay and help. "Me too, I'll stay too, the amazing Spider-Man, you go back, don't force yourself. The rest isn't dangerous. Besides, we can't let little Gwen go back alone and explain to Helen why none of us are going back, can we?" Russell interrupted the amazing Spider-Man, directly opening a portal and pushing him and little Gwen back. Soon, The others dispersed, splitting into two groups and heading towards the distance. One group consisted of Wanda, Gaia, and Spider-Man Noir. The other group consisted of Spider-Man Ghost, Spider-Man English, and Spider-Ham. This division was because only Wanda and Gwen possessed the portal magic, which could significantly reduce travel time. After Wanda left, the Ancient One spoke again. There's also a dark book in this dimension. Should we leave it to Wanda, or let me take it? That's quite a dilemma. Russell pondered for a moment. Then made up his mind, leave it to Wanda. I'll keep it for her. Although Wanda's potential in chaos magic is extremely high, the awakening of chaos magic still follows basic logic. Even if Wanda, who has studied the dark book, goes out of control, Russell is confident he can control her. Alright, the Ancient One nodded, activating the power of the Book of Vishanti in his hand. A dazzling seven-colored light shot out, pointing into the distance. Russell followed a golden light and saw a charred black ancient book, now emitting a scarlet light, pointing straight to the sky. Magical sparks flickered, and a small portal opened. Russell reached out and took the dark book. Seeing this, the Ancient One put away the Book of Vishanti, opened the portal, and left. Russell also opened a portal, heading to the River Styx in the Nightmare Dimension. Standing on the banks of the River Styx, Russell estimated how much energy the Nightmare Dimension could collect each year, while asking Penny Spider-Man, "Penny Spider-Man, what do you need me for? I want to resurrect my father." "Spider-Man, do you have a way?" Penny Spider-Man asked in a low voice. "Penny Spider-Man, you should know that your father's death is most likely related to the web event. Resurrecting your father might disrupt the balance of the web," Russell countered. "The web event is similar to an absolute point-in-time event. Once the web event is disrupted, the entire web of fate and life will be affected, which in turn will affect the entire universe, and even the Spider-Man multiverse. Of course, this is the worst-case scenario. I know. But I believe you, Wizard Spider-Man. Have a way." Penny Spider-Man looked at Russell earnestly. "You are the all-powerful Wizard Spider-Man. You really believe me, Penny Spider-Man?" Russell smiled. "That's right, I have a way. However, although you, Penny Spider-Man, speak very nicely, this is not enough. Reversing the web event will also require me to pay a heavy price." Having said that, Russell opened the portal again and headed to another location. He had already noted the total amount of energy in the River Styx, and by checking again after a while, he could estimate the annual energy production of the Nightmare Dimension. Now, it was time to receive the energy from the Nightmare Dimension. Penny Spider-Man quickly caught up with Russell. "Sorcerer Spider-Man, I can work for you. I've discovered that you need someone to help you find another dimension, and I can help you with that too." Passing through the portal, Russell stopped again, looking at the boundless ocean of energy before him, feeling a sense of exhilaration. "I agree, Penny Spider-Man. However, the deal can be done in 2 steps. Russell activated his talent, Energy Absorption, absorbing energy while negotiating with Penny Spider-Man. First, resurrection in another dimension. "Not long ago, I obtained a dimensional fragment, and I can collect your father's soul into my dimension, allowing him to live there. You can also visit him regularly. This condition can be fulfilled once you find your father's soul." Penny Spider-Man finding her father's soul is like finding a hellish dimension. Russell has hit the jackpot. Second, resurrection in the real universe. This condition is rather demanding. I haven't thought about the specifics yet. After all, I don't know much about the Web of Destiny incident. "Thank you, Spider-Man the Wizard," Penny Spider-Man said excitedly. Her expression brightened. Russell, watching the attribute point steadily increase, also felt a surge of joy. We both have bright futures. Chapter 148 The New Lord of the Dream Dimension. I've struck gold. I've struck gold. This was Russell's first thought upon absorbing the Nightmare Dimension stored energy. Although he didn't know the reason, the Nightmare Dimension stored energy was almost 3 times that of the Blood Dimension, approximately 6 billion units of energy. This was slightly more than the total energy Russell had absorbed in the past. Without hesitation, Russell opened his attribute panel. Deep blue, add points. The next moment, the previously 10-digit attribute points rapidly decreased, eventually settling at 7 digits. Meanwhile, the value of Divine Body continued to rise, getting closer to 10,000 points. Attribute points. 955, 5555, Divine Body. 3,800. Ultimately, Russell forcibly suppressed the urge to add more points, leaving over 9 million attribute points as seed money. He planned to launch his unique product, Attribute Point Energy, at the meeting at the Sanctuary, and establish a long-term, stable trade with the future Nightmare Dimension Lord. Leaving the dried-up ocean of energy, Russell returned to the Sanctum Sanctum to await news from Wanda's and Gwen's teams. Including the time spent absorbing the Nightmare Dimension's energy, Russell had only spent about 2 hours. Such a short time wasn't enough for Wanda and Gwen to notify the surviving life of the Nightmare Dimension. Yes, surviving. Whether it was the previous Nightmare Dimension's Lord being too brutal, or the Nightmare Strange being too ferocious, the number of native life forms in the Nightmare Dimension was far less than in the Blood Dimension or the Mephisto Flame Dimension. Perhaps, precisely because native life was scarce, other powerful demons were rare. The Nightmare Dimension consumed less energy, and naturally retained more. In that case, wouldn't an empty Nightmare Dimension be more in my interest? Should I take the native inhabitants of the Nightmare Dimension away? A thought suddenly popped into Russell's mind, but after a moment's thought, he abandoned the idea. The granary always needed someone to guard it, otherwise what if it got stolen? Pentakill. Just as Russell was pondering, an electronic voice sounded. Russell looked up and saw Penny Spider-Man sitting on the shoulder of the Spider-Man suit, a tablet on her lap, her hands moving rapidly up and down, operating the controls. Penny Spider-Man, are you playing a game? Yes. Spider-Man the Wizard, want to join? Penny Spider-Man replied without looking up. Oh, what game? Let me see. Russell got up and flew towards the Spider-Man suit. From the tablet screen, it was a 5v5 hero-based mobile game. Russell observed carefully and found that the controls for each character were quite good, and each had their own unique characteristics. Is this online? Can you connect to the network even in the Nightmare Dimension? Russell asked curiously. No, it's offline. Then why are these characters so agile? They're androids, Penny Spider-Man explained without looking up. They're bots, just with a very well-optimized algorithm. They look just like real people. I see. Add one next time. In a palace complex within the Nightmare Dimension, we've come to deliver a message. The Sanctuary will hold a meeting in 3 days to discuss the future order of the Nightmare Dimension. We hope the Dream Queen will attend on time. On the throne, a woman in red with red demon horns and flowing green hair, dressed in red, seemed oblivious, still lazily reclining. Your Majesty, they claim to be messengers of the Silver God. Seeing the Dream Queen's arrogance, a servant beside her whispered a reminder. The Dream Queen, who had been casually reclining and looking down, immediately sat up straight upon hearing her subordinate's reminder. She had initially thought they were people sent by other demons. Although she was high above, looking down at the three below, the Dream Queen no longer looked down upon them, and softly asked, Are you messengers of the Silver God? Only then did Wanda and the others see the Dream Queen's face clearly. White, pale. Aside from her hair and red lips, her exposed skin and eyes were completely pale. However, Wanda, looking at the Dream Queen in her red dress, inexplicably felt it suited her. If the Silver God you speak of is the master of the giant hand, then I am indeed his apostle. It wasn't Wanda who answered the Dream Queen, but Jia Yam. After all, among the three, only she and Russell had a strictly hierarchical relationship. Him? If you are his apostle, how can you use the word he to insult such a great being? He is so powerful, so majestic, so radiant, the Dream Queen corrected Jia Ya's address. Please inform him that I will certainly attend the meeting on time. A similar scene played out in many places in the Nightmare Dimension. In the blink of an eye, 3 days later, 17 Nightmare Dimension native demons, their energy always powerful, gathered at the Sanctuary. Their positions were also quite deliberate. The stronger ones were in front, the weaker ones were behind. Those of equal strength stood side by side. The leader was none other than the Dream Queen, clad in red. They all waited quietly, waiting for the two within the Sanctuary to finish their game. Penny, I told you, you can't beat me, Russell teased Penny, raising an eyebrow after securing another victory. Their score was now 120. Aside from a slightly awkward start in the first game, Russell had won 20 consecutive rounds. One more game, I was so close just now, Penny, Spider-Man, said, her eyes red. Seeing this, Gwen advised, alright, stop fooling around, let's get down to business. The Dream Queen stepped forward, humbly saying, the affairs of the gods are the affairs of the gods. If the gods wish, we can continue to wait. The other 16 demons glanced at her, never having seen the Dream Queen so obsequious. Russell was also surprised. He had intentionally given a warning to the other powerful demons in the nightmare dimension, hoping to gauge their reactions and select a representative. But now it seemed there was no need to choose. Looking directly at the Dream Queen, Russell asked, "Who are you?" The Dream Queen also looked at Russell, her gaze intense. "I was born without a name, only a title, Dream Queen. Former Lord of the Dream Dimension, daughter of nightmares. Want to become the Lord of the Dream Dimension? Agree to a few conditions, and you will be the Lord of the Dream Dimension." Russell didn't mince words, continuing to ask. Hearing this, the other demons stirred. They all cast envious, jealous, and hateful glances at the Dream Queen. Unexpectedly, the Dream Queen wasn't so enthusiastic about the position of Lord of the Dream Dimension. "God, aren't you going to succeed as Lord of the Dream Dimension?" the Dream Queen countered, asking Russell. "Lord of the Dream Dimension, what benefit does this position bring me?" Russell retorted. "Then why, God?" Noticing the change in Russell's gaze, the Dream Queen stopped asking further questions and stated her position first. "I agree to your request, God. I want to become the Lord of the Dream Dimension." Chapter 149 Initial deal completed. The Dream Queen knew perfectly well that whatever Russell's conditions were, if she didn't agree, other demons would. So why not agree? She could gain another dimensional lord position. "I support the Celestial's decision. I support the Dream Queen becoming the new Lord of the Dream Dimension. I agree too." Before Russell could announce the Dream Queen as the new Lord of the Dream Dimension, the other demons chimed in. It must be said that demons who survived the rule of Nightmare and Nightmare Anomaly Lords had excellent judgment. Once the demons' agreement subsided, Russell slowly spoke. "No rush, Dream Queen. Listen to my conditions first before making a decision. Celestial, please speak," the Dream Queen said calmly. She had already decided that no matter what Russell said, she would agree immediately. Russell took out a ball of 1,000 units of shimmering white energy, controlled it, and slowly floated it towards the Dream Queen. "Dream Queen, don't resist. Absorb and feel the properties of this energy." The Dream Queen parted her lips slightly, like a whale inhaling water, slowly drawing the shimmering white energy into her stomach. She let out a seductive moan, her alluring eyes fixed on Russell. Russell's face darkened. Anyone unaware of the situation would think he had tampered with the energy. "Dream Queen, be serious. Tell me how you feel." The Dream Queen frowned, pondering for a moment, then hesitated. "I feel my body and spirit, which weren't already at their limits, are being gradually strengthened. And there are no side effects." Russell nodded. "That's right. This energy can strengthen the body and soul of living beings. No limits. No side effects. My first condition is that I wish to establish a long-term, stable trade relationship with the Dream Dimension. Trading this shimmering white energy for the Dream Dimension's energy. The trade ratio is 1:10, with no less than 30 million units of energy per year." The other demons' expressions changed. Could it be that the gods intended to control them using such methods? Although Russell's words sounded nice, these demons weren't fools. They understood that there's no such thing as a free lunch. These luminous energies might have left loopholes while strengthening their bodies and souls. "All right. Any other conditions, Celestial?" the Dream Queen readily agreed. She knew that the position of Dimensional Lord wasn't given lightly. Compared to other methods of control, this was already quite mild. "The second condition is that the Dream Dimension must not actively invade or devour the real world. Otherwise, as the Sorcerer Supreme who protects the real world, I'll be in a difficult position." Russell's tone was cold, carrying a threat. He was openly threatening the Dream Queen. As long as the demons of the Dream Dimension didn't harbor any ill intentions towards Russell, this deal would be a win-win. With a continuous strengthening of the luminous energy over the years, the Dream Dimension would eventually recover from its current decline and become powerful. And once powerful, the Dream Queen might have other ulterior motives in order to generate more resources. "All right," the Dream Queen readily agreed again. The other demons showed no dissatisfaction with this condition. They were not up to the task of devouring the real world. Under the brutal rule of the previous two Dream Dimension Lords, powerful demons were either banished or slaughtered. Seeing that no one objected, Russell nodded in satisfaction. He formed a hand seal and retrieved a green orb of light from the mirror space. The moment the green orb appeared, it attracted the attention of the demons in the room. As demons born in the Dream Dimension, their intuition told them that it was the core of the Dream Dimension. As long as they gained its approval, they could become the Lord of the Dream Dimension. "The Dream Dimension is now in your hands, Dream Queen," Russell handed the green orb to the Dream Queen. The Dream Queen solemnly accepted it with both hands and then absorbed it into her body. Without the control core of the dream dimension, the so-called Dimensional Lord was merely a title. Only by truly possessing control of the dream dimension could the title of Dimensional Lord be truly deserved, allowing one to utilize the energy and laws within the dimension for combat. God, I wonder if we can make a trade now? I'd like to trade 20 million units of luminous white energy. The Dream Queen proactively offered a trade as soon as she received the control core of the dream dimension. She understood the importance of power all too well. In just over a decade, the dream dimension had changed hands twice. She didn't want to become the third. Moreover, as a dimensional lord, she needed to set an example for other demons. This was also a gesture of goodwill towards Russell. Russell glanced at the Dream Queen with surprise. 20 million units of luminous white energy was equivalent to 200 million units of ordinary energy. He hadn't expected the Dream Queen to be such a hidden tycoon. However, as the daughter of nightmares, it was normal for her to be somewhat different from other demons. Sure, but payment must be made before delivery. If it's a cash-on-delivery arrangement, Russell can't afford it right now. God, I also want to make a transaction. 1 million units. God, I also want to make a transaction. 3 million units. A few demons reacted instantly. Previously, their strengths were clearly differentiated, and they had almost all reached their limits, reducing their energy needs. Coupled with the hardships of life under the previous two lords, there wasn't much conflict between them. But what about the new order? Dynasties changed, the spoils were redistributed, and conflicts would intensify. If the luminous white energy could truly help them break through their limits and improve, the power dynamics would be rewritten. If my neighbor hoards food, I hoard weapons. My neighbor is my granary. Demons had no moral fastidiousness. Soon, the transaction amount exceeded 30 million. For the demons who proposed the trade, Russell, after ascertaining the energy storage coordinates, directly opened the channel to absorb the energy and settled the accounts on the spot. A moment later, 8 of the 17 demons in the room had traded for luminous white energy and begun absorbing it. They discovered a blind spot. The speed at which they absorbed luminous white energy was slower than their normal absorption of dream dimension energy. They didn't need to trade so much at once. Especially 1 or 2 demons who had traded almost all their energy were starting to regret it. The energy shortage was already affecting their combat power. Suddenly, a demon's aura surged at an almost visible rate. Now, the 9 demons who hadn't yet made a trade, worried about the quality of the shimmering white energy, could sit still any longer. God, I also want to trade 1 million units. God, I also want to trade 3 million units. Before long, Russell traded over 10 million attribute points of energy. The net profit totaled approximately 400 million attribute points. For a moment, Russell looked at the Dream Queen with even greater satisfaction. But this wasn't enough. Chapter 150 The matter is settled. Back to Earth 404. Dream Queen, from today onwards, you will be fully responsible for the energy transactions in the dream dimension. The price at which you sell will be determined by you. The annual quota will have a minimum of 30 million, with no upper limit. As Russell finished speaking, the Dream Queen's face lit up with undisguised joy. The other demons, however, looked grim. They all spoke up again, trading more luminous white energy to stockpile. Russell was giving the Dream Queen the exclusive sales agency rights for the Dream Dimension's luminous white energy. This was beneficial to both Russell and the Dream Queen. But for the other demons, it was not good news. If everyone could trade with Russell, the price of luminous white energy would be fixed. There would be no need to stockpile, just enough would suffice. But with the Dream Queen's exclusive agency, the price of luminous white energy would no longer be fixed. The demons would need to pay a much higher price to trade luminous white energy from the Dream Queen. Furthermore, offending the Dream Queen could result in being banned from trading. This power would solidify the Dream Queen's rule over the dream dimension. At the same time, the potential for profit would also increase the Dream Queen's initiative. This encouraged her to more actively promote the radiant white energy to more native inhabitants of the dream dimension, and even demons from other dimensions. Initially, Russell planned to find a few more agents to compete with each other. However, after some consideration, he abandoned the idea. Competition requires equal strength. Who knows, Russell might leave and the agents would be fighting to the death. The guarantee of a deal is military superiority. Demons aren't pushovers, They won't readily hand over money when they can buy something for free. In conclusion, Russell felt that the Dream Queen, Dimensional Lord, was the best agent. If she were no longer the one, then she wouldn't be. Russell was certain he wouldn't be wrong. After leaving behind 30 million units of radiant white energy, Russell led everyone out of the dream dimension and back to Earth 120,703. Having not eaten for several days, everyone except Russell was hungry. Although Russell wasn't hungry, he was craving something. Fortunately, they returned just in time for dinner. Golden magical sparks flickered in the living room as the portal opened. Russell and his group of 8 emerged from the portal. The moment they stepped out, the 5 Spider-Men pounced on the dining table like madmen, devouring the fish fillets, steaks, and cooking utensils. Wanda and Gaia, watching the 5 Spider-Men wolf down their food, felt their stomachs growl uncontrollably. "Helen, we might need you to prepare some more food," Ghost once said somewhat apologetically after filing their stomachs a little. "It's all right," Helen smiled, not taking it to heart. She knew these people were heading to a dangerous place to eliminate the threat to Extraordinary Gwen and Extraordinary Spider-Man, which was why they hadn't eaten for several days. "Helen, how long has it been since we left?" Russell asked before Helen returned to the kitchen to prepare food. "Today is the 6th day. Little Gwen and Peter returned 5 nights ago." Although she didn't understand why Russell asked this, Helen carefully calculated in her mind and gave the answer. Russell nodded. By the calculation, Extraordinary Gwen would have 3 or 4 more days for his soul and body to completely merge. If the checkup went smoothly, they could return to Earth 404. Sitting on the sofa, Russell and the others waited for Helen to prepare food. However, he felt something was missing. A book. Russell suddenly realized he was missing a book to pass the time. Condensing his divine power, Russell created a book out of thin air. A luminous white book appeared in his hand, and he began to read. Little Gwen leaned over and saw the title, Live Streaming to Become the Tiger King. "Russell, why do you always read these animal-themed novels? So childish." "Little Gwen, have you finished your homework?" Russell didn't hold back, directly starting their playful banter. Little Gwen put her hands on her hips and said confidently, "I've already finished my homework." "Are you sure?" "Little Gwen, want to take a look?" Russell laughed. Hearing Russell's words, Little Gwen was startled and quickly rummaged through her little backpack. While pulling out her homework, she continued to threaten him. "Russell, if you secretly use magic to change my homework, I'm not talking to you anymore." Little Gwen opened her homework with trembling hands, only to find that nothing had been touched. She breathed a sigh of relief. The fish fillets are done, but the steaks will have to wait a while. Just as Russell and Little Gwen were playing around, Helen came out with a bowl of fish fillets, and the Spider-Men pounced on them again. Russell was quick and grabbed 4 pieces, giving 3 to Little Gwen, Wanda, and Gaia. Wanda and Gaia were a little hesitant, while Little Gwen simply couldn't compete with them. After a few more rounds of this, the Spider-Men finally finished eating. And encouraged by the Spider-Men, Wanda, Gaia, and Little Gwen ate even more than usual. Little Gwen was so full that she collapsed on the sofa, refusing to move. Russell pushed a cup of tea in front of Little Gwen. "Have a cup of tea, it helps with digestion." Little Gwen thanked him, picked up the teacup, smelled the aroma, and slowly drank it. Russell poured a cup for the others as well. Although they didn't need the tea to aid digestion, it was already brewed, and it would be a waste not to finish it. After drinking her cup, Little Gwen exclaimed in surprise, "Hey, Russell. My stomach really doesn't feel as bloated after drinking this." Then, she sat up straight and poured herself another cup. The others also picked up their teacups and drank with curiosity. The tea was sweet, fragrant, and lingering, leaving a delightful aftertaste. After finishing 1 cup, they couldn't help but drink another. "Russell, how did you brew this tea?" "It's so delicious," Helen couldn't help but ask. She wanted to learn the recipe so she could brew it for her daughter, Extraordinary Gwen, and her 3 sons. Russell smiled slightly and explained, "Besides tea leaves, I added a little wild honey and used raw coconut water to brew the tea. As for aiding digestion, that was because of the added magic." After the meal, the group chatted while drinking tea. After finishing the tea, they had covered most of their topics. The 4 members of the Spider Squad took their leave. First, they pursued Khan, the last member of the Heirs family, then they brought back the amazing Spider-Man and entered the Dream Dimension to help. All in all, the Spider-Men had been away from their universe for over half a month. It was time to return. Before parting, Russell gave the apostle suit to Penny Spider-Man, instructing her to use it as needed once she found her father's soul. Penny Spider-Man alone might not be able to escape Hell Dimension with her father's soul. After seeing off the Spider-Man team, time flew by. 4 days passed in a flash. The amazing Gwen was successfully resurrected, and Russell and the others returned to Earth 404. Sorry for the late update. I owe 2 chapters from last month. I'll make up for them as soon as possible. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.